Chapter 11:14. Brosnan and Malfoy, two famous musicians, were at a loss. 1900 Wave Etude? What's that? Have you heard of it, Brosnan? No, I've never heard of it. Malfoy was at a loss. Is it because we're too ignorant? On such an occasion, under the eyes of the whole world, if he really wanted to express his gratitude, shouldn't he play a famous song that everyone was familiar with? But why haven't we heard of it? Brosnan's feeling became more and more obvious. Extraordinary people always do extraordinary things. We're not in a good enough state to understand. Although it was hard to understand, Brosnan was suddenly sure of one thing after less than 5 seconds of Qin Guang's fingers running over the keys. That's right, this Blake is that Blake. Malfoy, I'm sure that Blake, who plays Romeo, is the blind man who conquered all of us the day before yesterday. I suspected that he was too good at pretending to be blind that day, but if he has such acting skills, then it's not surprising. The song he's playing now should be an original piece inspired by The Pianist on the Sea. He has the ability. If it weren't for the fact that he has so few works, would even compare him to Tchaikovsky. Hearing that, Malfoy Bentler fell silent, which was rare for him. As proud and arrogant as he was, he had never been so thoroughly convinced by someone. However, he couldn't find any reason to doubt Blake. If both Blake were equally black, Malfoy Bentler could only admire him from the bottom of his heart. His acting skills, which were so perfect that they transcended time and space, and his amazing performance in Brosnan's cafe the day before yesterday, these two incredible talents were so favored by God to be combined in one person. Everyone had adapted the same song, and he had even combined the efforts of dozens of people from Bentler's studio and Brosnan's music academy, but he had completely lost to this guy named Blake. The difference between the two was not just a little bit, but the difference between the light of a grain of rice and the brilliance of the sun and the moon. Just as Malfoy Bentler was feeling indignant yet submissive, Qin Guang's performance finally skipped the simple warm-up and cut to the chase. The notes that were like a torrential storm assaulted one's face. It was so sudden that it didn't give anyone any time to prepare themselves mentally. A second ago, it was as tranquil and soothing as the blue Danube River, but in the next moment, it had become an oncoming sea. The waves were turbulent, and the waves soared into the sky. At a glance, one could not see the end, only the endless rise and fall of the deep sea. The storm came head-on. Although they could only hear the sound of the zither in their ears and look up at the bright moon and sparse stars in the sky, they felt as if they could feel the dripping of water on their faces. They could even smell the dampness of the sea. The most terrifying illusion in the world was knowing that it was an illusion, but being powerless to resist it. It was the same with the Romeo and Juliet just now, and it was the same with the Wavy Etude 1900 now. It might have been better for others, but for people like Brosnan and Malfoy Bentler, it was a great torment, but it was also a great happiness. Because the two of them had life experience, they understood movies, and they understood music. As a result, they were deeply immersed in the play, and the feelings they felt when they listened to the zither music became even deeper. 10 minutes ago, they were still deeply immersed in the sad story of the young couple, and their hearts ached so much that they couldn't breathe. 10 minutes later, they were dragged into the waves of the sea by a barbaric and domineering force. All of this happened so suddenly, and it was tough and fierce. What they heard in their ears was music, but the musical notes formed one after another seemingly substantial picture. Through the zither music, they seemed to feel the incomparably broad mind of the performer and composer. This kind of mind was enough to support the purest art, and an even purer life. Just like 1900, who was born in the sea and died in the sea, he came to this world with a pure life, but only left behind a purer life. He was like a white steed that flashed past a crack, and he didn't even have a real name. But even so, it couldn't be denied that in the world that belonged to him as outlined in the movie, he was worthy of the word great. People vaguely understood the true meaning of Blake's 1900 Wave Breaker Etude. It was called an etude, but it practiced the true meaning of life, and the courage to brave the wind and waves. The listeners seemed to incarnate 1900, sitting on this small boat of fate, sailing against the wind under the huge waves of life, and sailing far away. People like Old James and others, or Big Beard Deng and others who knew Blake's true identity, could also feel a little bit of Chen Guang's true feelings from this arrogant zither music. Why was he always so arrogant? Why was he always unwilling to bow his head to anyone who doubted him? Even if it was a temporary compromise, he would never do it. The reason was very simple. Just like what he expressed in this etude, he was very clear that his ability was worthy of respect. This was a performance of confidence, and his confidence was well-founded. In fact, he was not arrogant and rude, but when a person's talent reached a certain level, he would accurately judge his own ability. He denied and ridiculed people, but what he recognized was his own talent. What he truly respected was art, as well as achievements. He bowed his head to others and compromised, which was equivalent to denying himself. But once a person like him denied himself, it was equivalent to him belittling his own talent and achievement. Perhaps it would affect the state of mind that he had to reach or even surpass the peak in a certain field. Only a genius who was endlessly focused could be like him in every field that he set foot in, unprecedented and unparalleled. The reason why he could conquer every field that he wanted to conquer was because he had such a perfect and confident heart. He was a very complicated person. Those who had interacted with Chen Guang many times knew that although he was not refined and courteous, he definitely respected the old and loved the young. In the beginning, he had such a strong opinion of the Oscar committee, and his relationship with them was so strained. But after Irma pulled some strings, he did not show any arrogance when he saw Old James, but instead, he politely called him Mr. Watson. Another example was the time when he was targeted by the big shots in the North American film industry at the premiere of Women. If it wasn't for the divine weapon that fell from the sky, his premiere would have been completely ruined. But so far, he had never spoken ill of anyone in public. Although William Jones and Ben Affleck each accused Chen Guang of being rude on their social media, those who knew Chen Guang knew that it must have been those two guys who provoked him, which was why he had mercilessly slapped them in the face. All these signs showed that the real-life Chen Guang was not like ordinary celebrities who pretended to be approachable and not forget their original intentions despite being in a high position. Whether he was rich or poor, he really did not change. To achieve this was easy to say, but extremely difficult to do. Only the true detachment from his bones could support his personality of not blaming others when he was lonely, and not being arrogant when he was glorious. But when it came to his professional field, well, even though he had a lot of professional fields, let's call it Chen Guang's field for now. In short, when it came to matters involving Chen Guang's field, he changed from a good boy who respected the old and loved the young to a madman who despised the authority of the world. In the past, Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage thought that Chen Guang was quite schizophrenic, and sometimes they even wondered if they should find him a psychiatrist. But right now, this wavy Etude 1900, which everyone thought to be Chen Guang's original work, made many people feel that they didn't understand him or that they didn't fully understand him gradually feel that they understood him. If Chen Guang, who was playing the piano and pretending to be pretentious, knew that his behavior today had left such an impression on people, he would probably laugh his head off. You really think too highly of me, my friends, you really detoxify me. I don't need such a state of mind. I'm basically a master who was forced to learn all kinds of things through force feeding. That's right, I'm actually schizophrenic. But I don't want to see a psychiatrist, it's such a waste of money. Finally, the sound of the piano continued, gradually turning from rapid to slow, and people's hearts that were tightly gripped slowly calmed down. People looked back, and in this dark night, they seemed to see a window on the side of the ship. A ray of warm sunlight after the wind and rain shone through the window into the cabin of the ship, which was filled with countless floating dust. People's eyes were filled with the golden radiance of the sun, and countless dust spirits were jumping in the light. The imaginary scene in the minds of the listeners was like the song of the spirits coming from a quiet 1,000-year-old forest, which could make people's hearts become more peaceful and peaceful. After the sound of the piano stopped, whether it was in front of the stage or in front of the TV around the world, it seemed to be quiet for a whole minute, and then there was a deafening applause. Standing up from his chair, Chen Guang faced the stage. He faced the legal footage of UBC and YouTube, as well as the infringing footage of Twitch and ABC. However, he was not interested in pursuing these people's infringement. Instead, he deliberately waved in the direction of these infringers and nodded slightly. Chen Guang's encouragement gave these infringers a shot in the arm. Now everyone could guess that this Romeo and Juliet was specially prepared by the Princeton drama troupe for Mr. Black. Even Kinte Cameron was taking the risk of losing everything. So, even though everyone was signing a contract with the Princeton Repertory Company, Mr. Blake was the one who had the final say. As long as he agreed, then they could shoot with confidence. Chen Guang held the microphone in his hand and was not in a hurry to speak. Instead, he looked forward with eyes as deep as the sea. Chapter 11:15. The sea of people formed by the audience stretched from the stage to the Castle Villa building dozens of meters away, spreading out in a fan shape. Sitting at the front were the 100 or so members of the Oscar committee. Chen Guang nodded to old James and the others in the crowd, whose eyes were shining. The crowd spread out on both sides. Many of them were celebrities from all walks of life that he had met in Brosnan's cafe that day. Chen Guang even saw Bravo and Waltzman, the two big bosses of Prince's laboratory, in the crowd. Oh, and the heads of other scientific research institutions who had been arguing with Zhuo Jingxi recently. Other people, counting from here to the distance, were densely packed. Unknowingly, the place had been filled with nearly 20,000 people. Chen Guang glanced at the various cameras again. He thought to himself, there should be about 200 million viewers around the world right now, right? Then, this means that on average, one person in every 30 people in the world is watching the live broadcast of his stage play. According to the principle of word of mouth, as long as today is over, then the whole world will be shocked by his talent, especially his talent in acting. I only have one goal, and that is to make everyone who wants to watch movies or TV surrender from the bottom of their hearts and recognize that I, Chen Guang, am the strongest performing artist in the history of mankind. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. Thank you. Chen Guang finally spoke. He was full of energy and his pronunciation was perfect. This sentence was said in English, and it was a very pleasant, noble, and elegant medieval aristocratic accent. Across the ocean, Jean Shiyue and Jiang Yage clenched their fists tightly, looking very nervous. Sister Shiyue, what are you nervous about? Yage, I'm nervous about what you're nervous about. I think he's going to start showing off. He's happy. Oh my God, where did you learn such rude words? You can't blame me. Didn't he read online novels from time to time some time ago? I also read his book and accidentally learned it. But this word is very suitable to describe him now. Aren't you the same? No, I'm just thinking that once he reveals his identity, the Oscar will be in the bag. I'm happy for him. Old James and the other members of the World Party held their breath. They knew that the real master, who had been neglected and prejudiced recently because of his skin color and personality, was about to reveal his true face to the world. When that time came, he really wanted to see how Fred and the others would react. I'll definitely go to Donald's house and drink all the wine he's hiding. This is his punishment. Madame Josh Tam had brought back a copy of World Faction early in the morning. No wonder Donald had been hiding and refused to leave the house. He must have been studying it wholeheartedly. Previously, everyone was worried about his safety and repeatedly called him, but he was always secretive and refused to confess. He was clearly selfish. He must have decided to run naked because he sincerely recognized Chen Guang's artistic achievements and felt guilty. If you had told us earlier, we wouldn't have treated such a great artist like that. Do you want us to become negative examples in the history of art? We've been ruined by you. As for those who didn't know Blake's true identity, the doubts that had been hidden in their hearts were getting stronger. Who was this Mr. Blake who was like a gift from God to mankind? On the other end, Chen Guang finally spoke again. I know that many of you have all kinds of guesses about my identity. That's right, I'm not Blake. This is just an alias that I came up with. Everyone listened attentively. He was finally going to reveal the answer. On the stage, Chen Guang grinned before he took a deep breath and spoke in a different language. "Let's not talk about this matter anymore," Chen Guang said. "Thank you all. My friends from China, remember to like and follow me." Double-click 666. Pfft. Big Beard Deng, who was overwhelmed with emotions, was forcing himself to drink water to suppress his shock. When he heard that, he spat a mouthful of tea onto Yang Shi's face. Jiang Yage fell to the ground. "I knew he could speak Chinese, but your northeastern accent is too abrupt." Jean Shiyue covered her mouth and laughed. "Isn't that his style?" When the Huaxia people heard the standard northeastern dialect, how could they not know that this golden-haired young man was one of them? They cheered. On the other hand, the European and American audiences were bewildered. What? What does that mean? Is that Chinese? Can someone translate it for me? Mr. Johnson, I've learned a little bit. Booker, go ahead. The first sentence is to thank you all, 3 grams of oil. The second sentence is old iron block from China? What? Old iron block? What does that mean? It's probably an old antique that shows respect and gratitude to others. The second sentence is to ask people to like it. Yes, like it, then follow him. Just like how we follow Taylor Swift's Twitter. The last sentence is to ask people to hit 6. Hit 6 in a row. Poor Mr. Johnson. He had no idea what his secretary, Booker, had translated. Maybe even Booker himself didn't know. But on the stage, Chen Guang suddenly turned around and took a towel from Elma Watson. The towel was soaked in makeup remover. He had to perform a big face change and turn Blake into right Chen in a second. The silicone prosthesis on his nose bridge was a little tight. It would take at least half an hour to remove his makeup. But it didn't matter. The skin of the Earth Sauce Bomber was very durable. His makeup removal was a skill. Force could create miracles. Under the dazed gaze of countless people, Chen Guang smiled and slowly covered his face with the towel. Swoosh. Chen Guang's face on the cover of World School of Performing Arts and the poster of Women had suddenly appeared in front of everyone in an extremely sudden manner. Under the night sky, his blonde hair fluttered in the wind. His smile was so special. Below the stage, there was a lot of wailing. The first to bear the brunt was not President Fred, but William Jones, who was hiding in the crowd, Chen Guang's best competitor for the Oscars. Oh. God. My God. Why? Why is it him? William Jones held his head in his hands and screamed. He couldn't control his emotions at all. On the other side, Ben Affleck wasn't much better than William. At this time, the lead of July, a 3-time Oscar nominee for Best Actor, and a double winner of the Berlin Film Festival and the Paris Film Festival, was slowly squatting on the ground with a red face. He was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. At this time, his mind was full of the first time he met the Chinese, Chen Guang, and the mockery he had made at Chen Guang in the coffee shop next to the handprint wall square outside the Huaxia Theater. Every mockery he had given to Chen Guang had now become a knife in Ben Affleck's hand that stabbed into his heart. How stupid and ignorant must I be to say something like that to him? Brosnan also stood up, shouting hysterically like a madman. I knew it was him. I knew Blake was Blake, and Blake was right. The god of piano. The god of performing arts. Chapter 11:16. Brosnan's roar woke up the celebrities in the crowd who loved jazz and performing arts. They had seen Blind Blake the day before yesterday. There was an uproar, and these people were even more excited than the ordinary audience. Blind Blake, Romeo Blake, Chen Guang, the male lead of Women, and the world's best microsculptor, the world's best linguist, the world's best, okay, this guy has a lot of titles that can be called the world's #1. 2 days ago, he even made world-renowned research institutions like Prince Laboratory and Alamo Laboratory bow to him in some high-tech field. But that was not important. What was important was that all these complicated identities and abilities had been integrated into one person's body. People simply could not understand how a person could be like this Huaxia man, Chen Guang, and contain so many abilities in one body. What was the structure of his head? What was his body made of? Was his energy limitless? Was the capacity of his brain limitless? Or was it because he had countless completely split personalities and souls living in the same head? Was every personality in his body a stubborn genius? That was the only explanation. Although it was still inconceivable, it was easier to accept than before. Geniuses were always different from ordinary people. If a genius became a Huaxia man like Chen Guang, it would not be strange even if he had 3 eyes. President Fred's expression was so complicated in the darkness that he had to cover his face awkwardly. There seemed to be some relief in his eyes. Maybe he had already guessed this. But he felt a little awkward. He really did not want to admit that an Asian man could crush the entire European and American film and television industry in this way in the performing arts. He felt that the public boycott of Chen Guang by the American Film Association, which he had led in the past, might really be a sad joke. In the past, there had been Huaxia people who were respected in the European and American entertainment circles, but most of them had earned their fame with their fists like Bruce Lee. People respected them more because they had promoted Chinese kung fu to the world. Even Ang Lee, who had won an Oscar for Best Director, couldn't do what Romeo did on stage today. He was so domineering that it only took him 2 hours to get rid of all the controversies about his acting. As a result, they could now be said to be the most picky group of people in the world when it came to movies. The senior members of the Oscar committee racked their brains to find fault, but they couldn't. President Fred turned to look at old James beside him. "Mr. Watson, you prepared this, right?" Now that things had come to this, old James could no longer be secretive. He and old Foreman nodded in unison. "Yes, this was indeed arranged by us old men." "Fred, do you want to ask us why?" President Fred was silent for a few seconds. He looked at the stage with a complicated expression and shook his head. "No need to ask. I know the answer. Tell me, what do you think?" President Fred sighed and said, "We were wrong. We were wrong before. We shouldn't have judged the Chinese. No matter how good our reasons for boycotting him were, we were wrong. Besides, we shouldn't have given up our principles as filmmakers just because we boycotted him. We should at least watch his movies in private and read his books." Old James nodded and patted President Fred on the shoulder. "Fred, I'm glad that you've realized this. It's not too late. Remember, although the art of film is not as pure as it used to be, we will always be interfered with from all sides. But no matter what the outside world thinks, as filmmakers, especially you, as the president of the American Film Association and the chairman of the Oscar committee, you can't learn from others and go with the flow. You should look at problems with a more proactive and dialectical perspective. You must have your own principles and perseverance. When you encounter something, you have to use your brain and think about it. If Women was really just Chen Guang's boastful reputation, their box office would have collapsed a long time ago. This is a movie from China. Even the English dub version was only released yesterday, but the box office of this movie has already become phenomenal. There must be a reason for this. Besides, as far as I know, even though the English version has been released, the Chinese version of Women's box office is still much higher than the dub version. This can only be because Chen Guang's acting skills are comprehensive and three-dimensional. His expressions, eyes, body language, and even his lines and accent make up his unique world-class acting skills. Just like you know, performing arts are magical arts. They can infect people. We all say that if a performance can make people immerse themselves in the scene and feel the same way, then it's a great performance. However, Chen Guang is different. He has brought out every single detail to the extreme, and through his world-class performance, he has pulled the other actors and audience into his world. When we watch his performance, it's not just a simple performance, but it's like we're experiencing someone else's life. This is the highest level of performing arts. Fred was deeply remorseful. The old president is right. Old James nodded with great satisfaction and stopped lecturing Fred. He wouldn't admit that he was actually no different from Fred before. If Irma hadn't kidnapped him, an old stubborn man like him would only be more difficult to deal with than Fred and Malfoy. Fortunately, old James finally stood in front of Chen Guang with the help of his sensible granddaughter and came to his senses in time. Now, of course, he could righteously put on the posture of an old senior and preach to his successor, Fred. The 29 members of the World Party were also doing the same thing as old James. They keep saying the same thing. Young people, lads, don't think that we're useless just because we're old. See, old ginger is spicier after all. On the surface, the reason why we helped Chen Guang make this scene of Romeo and Juliet is to give him a chance to prove his ability in front of the whole world. However, gold would eventually shine, and no one could stop Chen Guang's unprecedented acting skills from gaining the acknowledgement of the world. The only difference was whether it was sooner or later. We're not giving Chen Guang a chance, we're giving all the members of the Oscar committee a chance. Our real goal is to make you, the backbone of the Oscar committee, who have been selectively blinded by your own choices, re-examine this matter. The judges of this year can't be nailed to the pillar of shame in history. We can't let such a sentence be written in the history of art hundreds of years later. Because of arrogance and racial prejudice, the founder of the world's performing arts and one of the greatest performing artists in human history, Chen Guang, missed out on his first Oscar Best Actor award. Fred, who was then the chairman of the committee, and his companions joined forces to create the biggest shady business in the history of the performing arts. If that really happened, how sad would it be? After being reminded by these industry seniors who boasted of their foresight, people like Fred and Malfoy broke out in a cold sweat. Poor Donald Jostein decisively became the scapegoat again. It's all your fault, you selfish bastard. If you had told us earlier that Chen Guang was such a great person, he wouldn't have been in such a precarious situation. Apart from these people, the audiences in front of their computers and televisions all over the world weren't any better. Those who had already gone to the cinema to watch Women felt that everything was as it should be. As for those who had never been to the cinema for various reasons, perhaps because they were boycotted, or because they were busy, or for some other reason, or because they didn't understand the monograph on World's Pie, their faces were flushed with embarrassment. Those in China who had mocked Chen Guang on the internet for losing face overseas felt like they were struck by lightning. They wondered if they should take a few days of sick leave to hide. Once again, they secretly regretted in their hearts. Why were I so stupid? Why didn't I learn from my mistakes? Damn it, Chen Guang is a pit, and he makes me fall into it every time. I'm so angry that I forget the pain every time the scar is healed. Why don't you fail once? Forget it, I'll call the cake shop and order a brownish-yellow spiral cake. There are a lot of people who want to eat sh*t now, and I definitely won't be able to make it in time for the hot one. I'll just use a cake with a similar color to top it off. What? The coffee-colored cream is gone? Can't you just buy some Dove powder and sprinkle it? In less than a minute after Chen Guang took off his mask, it could be said to have shocked the world. At the same time, it also brought a lot of business to cake shops all over the world, especially in China. Sensing the cheers coming from below the stage and the gazes of worship from the audience, Chen Guang's heart calmed down. The old man had finally settled this **T incident. The so-called best effect of acting cool was, of course, to let those who thought highly of him and supported him feel proud, and to let those who only wanted to see him make a fool of himself, and wished that he could fall to the bottom of the abyss, feel so much pain that they wished they were dead. This time, who knew how many people were going to live stream themselves eating **T? If this goes on, our country's septic tanks will be emptied, right? Giving another deep bow, Chen Guang continued, in any case, would like to thank everyone for appreciating my Romeo and Juliet. Thank you to the Princeton Repertory Theater, thank you to Irma Watson, thank you to Mr. James Watson, thank you to all the people in the American Film Association who have supported and helped me, thank you to the crew of Women, thank you to all the employees of Tianguan Group, thank you. Chapter 11:17. Chen Guang really couldn't remember how many people he had thanked. He simply racked his brain for fear that he would miss out on someone. He had already treated today as his own award ceremony. Also, I have to thank a certain person who has been supporting me from behind. No, it's my goddess. As the saying went, milk is mother. Although Chen Guang and Lu Li seemed to be at loggerheads on the surface, he still had to express his gratitude subtly at such a critical juncture. Recently, they had been on bad terms. It would be good to coax her a little. Lastly, I would like to thank my parents. Fang Tianyu tried his best to signal him with his eyes. Chen Guang felt helpless. All right, I still have to thank the country. Fang Tianyu heaved a long sigh of relief. The boss was really knowledgeable. In Yanjin, the old men who woke up early in the morning to watch Beijing opera spat on the ground. This kid is mocking us. The old man in charge of the SARFT system slammed the table angrily. What's wrong with mocking you? Some departments and some people forget their duties when they have more power in their hands. They forget that they should serve the people. They always like to use chicken feathers as arrows and come up with all kinds of censorship methods to collect fees that they shouldn't have, stifling the creativity of artists. The old man in charge of science and technology said sarcastically. The old man from the SRFT slammed the table and stood up. You only know how to spout nonsense. You know nothing. You think I don't know? Wasn't it because Chen Guang wanted to share his photocatalysis research with the Chinese Academy of Sciences? Your buttocks are all crooked. Even if you want to lick him, don't make things difficult for me. Do you really think artistic work is that easy? The old man from the Faculty of Science and Technology continued to speak sarcastically. Yes, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but why did you stop me when I wanted to send out a notice to all the universities to organize their students to watch the movie? The way I see it, you just can't bear to see others doing well. It turned out that there was a conflict between the two of them. That's easy for you to say. Why do you think I stopped you? Does Chen Guang's movie need you to fake things like this? You don't even need to organize it. Do you believe that all the university students in the country will line up to watch it themselves? I'm doing it for your own good. So as to avoid being gossiped about. Can a layman not meddle in the affairs of a layman? Wait a minute, don't quarrel, it's a big matter. Hey, look over there, there's a white man running onto the stage. Old man Jin's eyes were glued to the screen when he was trying to stop the fight. When he saw the new situation, he immediately shouted. The two old men who were quarreling immediately calmed down and turned to look at the TV. They just happened to see an old man with messy hair running up the stairs. Why is Donald here? Below the stage, old James shouted in surprise. Chen Guang turned around and saw Donald Joshtyne. He felt a headache coming on. You still have the face to appear in front of me? You don't even know how miserable I've been. Chen Guang clenched his fists tightly. He was measuring Donald's resistance, wondering if he could send him flying with a single punch. Below the stage, there was an inexplicable shock. Only old James and a few others knew the truth of the matter. The others had already placed Donald Joshtyne on the opposite side of Chen Guang. Shouldn't the owner of the Huaxia Theater, who was made to run naked by the Great Right, be the enemy of the Huaxia people? What was he doing here on such an occasion? Donald Joshtyne started waving his arms crazily the moment he ran onto the stage. He shouted, Mr. Chen. I'm sorry. What? The famously stubborn and extreme Mr. Joshtyne apologized to Chen Guang in public. What was going on? Wasn't he the one running naked? Why was he apologizing? Chen Guang sighed when he saw that. Sigh, this bastard probably knew that he was going to be beaten up. He apologized so quickly. Sigh, forget it. Let bygones be bygones. Chen Guang waved his hand magnanimously. I'm not such a petty person. Fang Tianyu, who was below the stage, and Lu Xiaoyang, who was far away in Los Angeles, thought that their boss was getting more and more shameless. If he wasn't petty, then everyone in the world would be so petty. Please lend me your microphone. I need to explain to everyone. Donald bowed to Chen Guang in embarrassment before turning to borrow the microphone from Irma Watson. Everyone, I just came here from Los Angeles. I'm sorry that I missed Mr. Chen's Romeo and Juliet, but I'm glad that I managed to catch the last bus. I'm here to explain the misunderstanding that I've caused to everyone. My conscience tells me that my pursuit of film art tells me that I can't let Mr. Chen's performance be doubted. I can't let the misunderstanding continue. Mr. Chen from China is the greatest performance artist that I, Donald Joshtein, have ever seen in my life. I swear on the honor of the Joshtein family. After a short break and catching his breath, the first thing Donald said into the microphone stunned everyone with his mouth agape. Then why did Mr. Joshtein run naked in the Chinese theater? Not far away from the stage, the reporter decisively made a professional response and loudly asked this very sharp question. Everyone thought that Donald would at least be embarrassed. After all, he only wore a tie and checkered underwear, which made him look very funny. He had embarrassed himself. However, not only did he not feel embarrassed, he even had a proud smile on his face. I hope that many years later, my story will resound in the history of art along with Mr. Chen's name. Let me tell you an interesting story. 3 minutes later, Donald finished the whole story with an emotional voice. In the beginning, he looked down on Chen Guang, to the ridiculous bet he made with Tang Xiao, and when Chen Guang received the support of many famous figures in the industry, he still felt indignant in his heart. He felt that the art of film was being humiliated. Later, with the help of his wife, Jenny Joshtein, he finally let go of his prejudice and flipped open the first volume of World School of Performing Arts with Chen Guang's face on it. Then, he was fiercely shocked. He was so shocked by the bold and imaginative new theories in the book that his face turned red with embarrassment. The next day, as the owner of the Chinese theater, he sneaked into his own theater in disguise. He finally felt what it meant to be a real world school. Yes, I finally understood my lowliness. He finally understood my foolishness. At that time, I finally understood why Chen Guang would bring his women across the ocean to Hollywood. Even though he knew that his actions would bring him endless resistance. He must have known that people like me would be an obstacle in his way. Everything he did was because he couldn't wait to contribute his great achievements to the world. No matter how much resistance there was, he was willing to pay for it himself. What a great feeling. Mr. Chen is such a great person. In order to defend true art, in order to make the light of art even more dazzling, he charged forward like a brave soldier on the battlefield. Compared to his greatness, I was so ridiculous and stupid. I felt so ashamed that I couldn't sleep at night. I just wanted to do something to get rid of the torture in my heart so that I could calm down and continue to study the great world faction. So, I chose to fulfill my promise and ran a lap around the Huaxia Theater in my underwear and a tie. Forgive my selfishness. I should have said all this earlier, but I was too addicted to a world school. I just wanted to immerse myself in the ocean of World School of Performing Arts. Because of my selfishness and negligence, I brought a lot of trouble to everyone, especially to Mr. Chen. So, here and now, I want to apologize to Mr. Chen and all the filmmakers in the world. I'm sorry. Donald Joshtein said. Then, he bowed to the camera again. This time, the whole world was silent because of his determination. Chapter 11:18. Chen Guang chuckled. Mr. Joshtein, don't be like this. It's not that serious. Joshtein's apology was sincere, and he did it in front of the entire world. Most importantly, Donald Joshtein was a very honest man. Alright, he was a stubborn man. When he looked down on you, he would ignore you even when you waved a check at him. When he looked up to you, he would even throw away his pride to support you. It was torture to deal with such a person if you could not grasp his weakness. But once it was to his liking, or it could be said that he was subdued by something deep in his heart, he would no longer be secretive like many people who wanted to save face. Instead, he would directly turn from an enemy to a fan. Sensing the gazes of admiration coming from below the stage, Chen Guang couldn't sense any enmity, even with his acute senses. He even unconsciously glanced at William Jones and Ben Affleck, who were hiding in the crowd. These two were his strongest competitors for the Oscars. They used to be so arrogant, but now, when they accidentally made eye contact with him, they turned their heads away in shame with apologetic looks in their eyes. Chen Guang could roughly imagine that at this moment, there might be people among the nearly 200 million people in the world who still had doubts about him, but that was no longer important. At least in the hearts of the majority of the audience, his acting skills were undoubtedly the best in the world. However, this was not enough. Performing arts such as movies and even TV series had a wide audience. Few people acted in movies, but at least half of the world's 6 to 7 billion people liked or had watched movies. 200 million people only accounted for 1/15 of the audience. This was far from enough. Including the people who had been conquered by women, Thunderstorm, and the world's faction, the total should not exceed 500 million. The overall proportion was still less than 1/6 of the audience. It was still far from the standard of the heavenly Holy Grail. However, Chen Guang wasn't anxious. With the development of modern information technology, his movie was still being screened, and World Faction was still selling well. His feat tonight would continue to spread, and it was easy for people to go along with what others said. In the future, when more people started to acknowledge his acting skills, it would only be a matter of time before he left such an impression in the hearts of the 3 to 4 billion people watching the movie. The Chinese Chen Guang was fully deserving of being the world's best performing artist. In the hearts of those who understood his work, this idea was very strong. In the hearts of those who were merely parroting, this idea might still be doubtful, but at least it would leave an impression. Even if they did not completely approve of this idea, they would not deny it either. At least they knew about this person and this matter. Now, what Chen Guang had done was equivalent to lighting a fire on dry wood and pouring a bucket of oil on it. Even if it rained, it would not be able to stop the fire. At this moment, Chen Guang knew that he had basically succeeded. Donald spoke again. "Mr. Chen, I'd like to take this opportunity to officially invite you to leave your handprint on the handprint wall in front of the Huaxia Theater on behalf of the Huaxia Theater. This will be the greatest honor of the Josh Tan family in the past 100 years of being involved in the film industry. Please allow me to express my sincere apology and unparalleled respect to you with the highest courtesy of the Josh Tan family." Indeed, there had been Chinese people who had left their handprints on the handprint wall in the past. However, that was the operation of the market economy. It was not recognized by the mainstream in Europe and America. Because of that, it had caused a lot of controversy. As a result, Donald had not allowed anyone to leave their handprints on the wall for the past 2 years. In fact, Donald had not even attended the handprint ceremony back then. The people who had paid to leave their handprints on the wall were not using the same wall as Master Chaplin and the rest. They had built a new wall later on and did not have any actual status at all. Of course, the people in China would definitely not take the initiative to talk about this. In fact, once it was reported on the internet, they would try their best to suppress it. It had probably been many years since Donald had publicly invited someone to leave their handprint on the handprint wall, let alone in such a respectful tone. Suddenly, a figure rushed up from below the stage. It was Fred, the president of the American Film Association. He took the microphone from Captain Gold and stood beside Chen Guang. "Mr. Chen, on behalf of the American Film Association and the Academy Award Committee, I would like to formally invite you to leave your name in the World Film Hall of Fame in Hollywood. In addition, I would like to sincerely invite you to give us a real public lecture. We really want to hear you personally explain your world-class performing arts." As expected of Fred, who was half in the film industry and half in politics. His ability to adapt to the situation was not just for show. Just 2 hours ago, he was the most influential person in the world who was boycotting Chen Guang. However, he had now become Chen Guang's most loyal fan. Perhaps it was because he was really moved by the world-class party, or perhaps it was his decision after weighing the pros and cons. However, there was no doubt that Fred's attitude would play a decisive factor. Chen Guang took a deep breath and nodded at both of them. Then, he said in a serious tone, "All right. No problem." Hence, under the watchful eyes of almost 200 million people, Donald Jostein and President Fred, representing two different film halls, issued an official invitation to Chen Guang. Chen Guang also accepted the other party's offer of a way out. Actually, based on his temper in the past, even if he had the upper hand, he would not stop until he humiliated the other party to vent his anger. However, things were different now. Chen Guang had become a big shot, and the other party apologized sincerely under the watchful eyes of the public. Moreover, the more obvious their change in attitude was, the more contrasting it would be in the eyes of ordinary people. This would be a great help to Chen Guang's subsequent attempt to become a god of acting. Tonight's 3-hour global live broadcast of the stage play finally came to an end in a joyous atmosphere. Subsequently, reports about Chen Guang's version of Romeo and Juliet spread all over the world like snowflakes. There was also Donald Jostein's apology and clarification, as well as President Fred's invitation. Of course, there were also all sorts of flattery that involved women and the World Party. Overnight, Chen Guang's name changed from a new actor who had just entered the industry to a world-famous master. They had heard of Chen Guang in the past, and this was akin to having their impression of Chen Guang refreshed. They quickly overlapped the actor Chen Guang with the countless identities he had in the past. Finally, when they realized that they were the same person, their personal image of Chen Guang rose once again. That night, the midnight screening of Women in the United States once again exploded in the box office. It continued to rise against the trend and even surpassed the feat of breaking 10 million people in a single day. The one-day box office reached an incredible US $50 million. In addition, originally, Chen Guang had no plans to release in Europe. Recently, several large European hairstyling companies had been negotiating with the Tianguang Group in China. They had also besieged Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu in Los Angeles and Princeton respectively. If it weren't for the strong moral character of the Tianguang Group, they would have been addicted to the sugar-coated bullets thrown at them. Originally, the negotiations had been going back and forth. Because the price and terms of both parties hadn't reached a completely satisfactory level within the Tianguang Group, they hadn't been able to come to an agreement. As for Chen Guang's opinion, when Fang Tianyu asked him, this was what he said. "Don't talk to me about these trivial matters. Anyway, I only have one request. We've spent so much money here. Since the European side has taken the initiative to come to us, of course, we have to take the money. Most importantly, they have to ensure the transparency of the screening schedule and box office statistics. As for the distribution of the box office, you guys know better than me. Anyway, the more money, the better. The more people watching the film, the better. I don't care about anything else, I only care about the results." Now, after tonight's events, the distribution companies in Europe, Oceania, South America, and even Africa, who refused to make any concessions in the previous negotiations, almost collapsed. Originally, they could still insist on the conditions because they had made up their minds that if they couldn't come to an agreement, they would let the domestic distribution companies unite and not import the film. However, now that Chen Guang's Romeo and Juliet had exploded in the word of mouth, the local audiences who had been waiting for a long time for a blockbuster were unhappy and started to protest. In addition, when the benefits weren't tempting enough, they could unite and not import the film. But now, the potential benefits were enough to move everyone. Almost everyone knew that once a film like Women was introduced, it would be like an old hen that laid golden eggs. The business world was like a battlefield. Who could resist such a temptation? In the end, almost all the distribution companies in all the continents reached an agreement in an instant. They went from working together to not importing the films to working together to import them. Apart from that, they made appropriate concessions in terms of box office revenue, but gave preferential terms in terms of the screening rate, which was enough to move people. That night, matters related to the introduction and distribution of Women in other continents were almost finalized. As for the Asia-Pacific region, everything was handed over to Qianda Pictures, which was one of the investors. In addition, the follow-up development of the audio and video copyright of Chen Guang's version of Romeo and Juliet was also handled by Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang, who were in the United States. Although the Princeton Drama Troupe was responsible for this matter, and it was led by Old James and the others, all the expenses came from Chen Guang's account. When Chen Guang asked Fang Tianyu to complete the funding, he had already signed the relevant contract for the entire program's copyright. The Princeton Drama Troupe took the money, but the copyright belonged to the Tianguang Group. In addition, that night, Zhuo Jingxi, Hua Ling, and Zhong Yu stayed in the Prince Laboratory Industrial Park under the protection of Auntie Mei. They were busy all night. Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang were also extremely busy. Only Chen Guang was comfortably lying in the hotel like a deity. 1 minute on stage was 10 years of hard work off stage. Although it only took him a moment to learn acting in the real world, he had suffered a lot in the world of cups. In order to achieve the most perfect performance, Chen Guang was also in a state of desperation. Not only did he drag everyone into the play, but he was also deeply immersed in the play. Although his mind was far more tenacious than ordinary people, he was still a little tired. He slept soundly, and when he opened his eyes, it was already the next day. Chapter 11-19. It was time to leave Princeton. Before leaving, Chen Guang first went to Prince's laboratory. Under the gaze of Bravo and Wurtzman, Chen Guang walked straight into the experimental area that was temporarily allocated to Zhuo Jingxi. Practically all of the most advanced and core equipment in the Prince Laboratory's photocatalysis field was gathered in this region. It was so much so that the Prince Laboratory even took the initiative to purchase equipment and raw materials worth $50 million to meet Chen Guang's requirements. However, Zhuo Jingxi and Chen Guang didn't leave any loopholes for them. The list of raw materials was 5 times the actual variety. This was to confuse the public and prevent technical leaks. In addition, all of the equipment for weighing and sampling were purchased by Zhuo Jingxi. In this area of the laboratory building, 3 other professional agents from the Chinese military carried out a complete transformation. At the same time, the network connection was cut off, cutting off the possibility of Prince's spying. Any equipment that might leave traces of operation had their memory chips purchased by Zhuo Jingxi. Equipment that didn't have a replacement chip was not allowed to be used. In addition, other than Zhuo Jingxi, Hua Ling, and Zhong Yu, no one else was allowed to enter. Even Bravo and Wurtzman belonged to this category of outsiders. In order to achieve a foolproof effect, Chen Guang even borrowed some professional security personnel from the Chinese Academy of Sciences to act as security consultants and staff. They were strictly guarded 24 hours a day. There was only one purpose, which was to blatantly occupy the scientific research resources of Prince's laboratory without leaving any loopholes. After all, in the world's scientific research field, there were too many examples of losses due to leaks. It was important to be wary of others. Bravo and Wurtzman were both angry and helpless when faced with Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi's attitude. They felt like Chen Guang was too much. Now that they knew how powerful Chen Guang was, even if they were given a chance and a loophole, they wouldn't dare to pry. The patent rights for the 5 formulas that they published had been officially registered with the assistance of Baker Law Firm, and it was a global patent. Even if he stole Chen Guang's patent, with Chen Guang's current global reputation, and at the same time, he did not lack money to fight a lawsuit, so it was impossible for him to try to get involved. Moreover, getting Chen Guang's technical support was more beneficial than stealing these 5 patents. Now that he had offended him, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't simply unite all the other companies that still relied on him. Then he would be in an extremely passive position. Wazita and Sanmei, the 2 people who were excluded in advance, might take the risk in desperation, but Prince, who already had a stable income, was absolutely not interested in seeking his own death. "Hey, Teacher Zhuo, I'm going back to Los Angeles now." Outside the laboratory, Chen Guang looked at Zhuo Jingxi, who was wearing a white coat, through the dust-free glass. Prince had provided the highest-level dust-free laboratory. The conditions were much better than Gokyo University's, but there were still some inconveniences. Okay, you go ahead and wait for my good news. I'll try to make all of them for you in a month and a half. Zhuo Jingxi said with a smile. Chen Guang was a little annoyed. How could we not kiss each other affectionately? This time, he met Teacher Zhuo in Princeton, but he didn't get to drink any soup. He felt so miserable. I'm a bit reluctant to leave you. How about we don't do anything today? Let's go have a meal to celebrate. I feel like everything has been going well recently. Zhuo Jingxi just smiled and did not say anything. She was not a child anymore. How could she not understand Chen Guang's intentions? No, this isn't a school, and it's not a verification experiment. Today is a very important synthesis step. I can't leave. Oh, you're a big shot that attracts the attention of the world. Time is precious to you, and I really can't leave. Wait until I'm done with the things on hand and complete the conversion of the results of these 5 formulas. Your Tongshan factory will be safe, and your laboratory will be built. When that time comes, you can do whatever you want, okay? Zhuo Jingxi was soft-hearted. She looked at Chen Guang's eager face and teased him through the glass. Chen Guang sighed in his heart. Time is precious, but isn't a night worth 1,000 gold? Also, how can things be done in this world? There will be a lot of other things to do. He had to achieve his dreams and pursue his career, but he also had to improve his quality of life, right? Oh yeah, have you thought about the name of your laboratory? Zhuo Jingxi asked again. Chen Guang was too lazy to think about it. I don't have time to care about this. I'll decide when the time comes. Teacher Zhuo, come quickly, ignore Chen Guang. On the other side, Hualing started to urge him again for some reason. Zhuo Jingxi quickly said goodbye to Chen Guang. Go do what you need to do, I'll go first. Don't worry about me, we arrange for people to stay in the laboratory every day, it's safe. Chen Guang nodded helplessly, said goodbye to Auntie Mei, who was sitting next to him drinking tea and reading, and left with a bitter smile. Chen Guang boarded the plane alone at 9 o'clock. 9 hours later, around 7 o'clock in the evening, he successfully arrived at LAX. Fang Tianyu did not follow him back. Instead, he was left in Princeton to deal with the aftermath of Luo and Zhu. Chen Guang also asked him to assist Zhuo Jingxi. The handprint wall ceremony was delayed by a day, to tomorrow evening. This way, they would have more time to prepare for the ceremony. Donald planned to let Chen Guang leave his name on the first handprint wall, along with Chaplin, Hitchcock, Akira Kurosawa, and other masters who would go down in history. Moreover, Donald even wanted to write such a note under Chen Guang's handprint. The founder of the World School of Performing Arts, the youngest master in the history of film, the great artist who brought the performing arts into a new era. In addition, the members of the Film Association, including President Fred, Malfoy, Old James, and others, had flown back to Los Angeles earlier than Chen Guang. They were preparing for the World Film Hall of Fame ceremony the day after tomorrow. At the same time, they had to send out public invitations to invite senior and ordinary members of the Film Association to give a public lecture by Chen Guang in the Film Association's conference hall, which could accommodate 2,000 people. The specific content and video of the lecture would be promoted to all parts of the world in the form of teaching materials under the promotion of the Film Association. If it had been someone else, Fred and the others might have asked them to make sufficient preparations for such a lecture. At the very least, they would have to come up with a complete lesson plan and pass the Film Association's review and approval. However, as for Chen Guang, since everyone had not been very happy with each other previously, and Fred and the others did not even know how to nitpick Chen Guang's theoretical system, they simply cut out the minor details. In short, anything that Chen Guang said about the World School of Performing Arts would definitely be the golden rule. They even seized the time to preview the 2 books of World School of Performing Arts on the plane. However, there was a very awkward situation. Other than the 29 members of the World School of Performing Arts, the others could not buy it on the streets that night. However, Chen Guang did not agree to release a digital version, so the big shots of the Film Association could not buy a copy of the film monograph. It was the biggest joke in the world. In the end, Fred and the others went through a lot of trouble and finally managed to get more than 20 sets before they boarded the plane. However, it was still far from enough for everyone to have a copy. As a result, when they boarded the plane, they had no choice but to squeeze together and read the same book at the same time. This situation only changed after they got off the plane in Los Angeles that afternoon. Perhaps it was through extortion, or perhaps it was through persuasion, but in short, the big shots managed to get their hands on a set. In addition, before Chen Guang got off the plane, they continued to show their prowess. Under Donald's lead, they directly charged into the spare viewing hall of the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood and booked it, or they used the privileges of the association to take the digital source to the small screening hall in Fred's house, or they secretly went to someone's house to watch. Chen Guang returned to the Flemington Hotel and asked Lu Xiaoyang to report to him. "Boss, our total box office in Huaxia has officially exceeded 1 billion yuan, and the North American box office has reached 430 million US dollars. Currently, the full distribution contracts for the rest of the Asia-Pacific countries, Europe, Oceania, South America, and Africa have just been signed. The day after tomorrow at the latest, it will be released worldwide." Chen Guang nodded calmly and satisfactorily. "That's good." But Face was stunned by Chen Guang's calmness. No wonder he was the boss. He could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. If it was someone else who heard such a box office performance, wouldn't they jump 3 feet high? According to the estimates of accounting firms such as PricewaterhouseCoopers and a market research company under Forbes, the global box office of Women is very likely to exceed 2 billion US dollars. Chen Guang was still very calm. Who has the highest box office in history? How much is it? It's James Cameron's Avanti, no, Avatar, 2. 73 billion US dollars. The second place is still Cameron's Titanic, 2. 185 billion US dollars. Chen Guang sighed. It's very difficult to be the first in history. Lu Xiaoyang felt lucky that he had been with the boss for some time. If it were someone else, it would be very difficult to resist the urge to beat him up. "Boss, in the past, it was very possible for a movie to be released for a year. Times are different now. Even the best movie will not be released for more than 3 months. 2 billion USD is already very impressive." Chen Guang shrugged. "Fine. How much can we get?" "The average domestic box office is 40% to 60%, and we can get 3.5% of the North American box office. After pulling in all of them, deducting the distribution costs and the share we give to Chienda Pictures, our company's final profit should be around 700 million US dollars. Chen Guang's lips curled up slightly, and then he suddenly stopped smiling. "I can't smile. I can't smile. 700 million US dollars. I can only get tens of thousands of RMB a month from a female student in a film school. With so much money, if I were to do bad things, how much can I get? Harem of 3,000 beauties. Oh no, I can't control my arm anymore. Damn, maybe I've been holding it in for too long. My mind has been a little open recently. That's good. What else is going on? Tell me all at once." In North America, the General Edition and Deluxe Edition of World School Performing Arts have been sold out. Now we want to print 5 million more General Editions and 1 million Deluxe Editions, but... Chapter 11:20. But why? "Boss, you know that the manufacturing costs in North America are very high, and we are in a hurry. Many printing factories have taken the opportunity to demand exorbitant prices. Although our company is not short of money now, we all know how you do things." Chen Guang nodded and snapped his fingers. "That's right, butt face. You know me well. No matter how much money we have, we can't be fooled." Lu Xiaoyang sighed again. "But the market reaction is too strong. Bookstores all over the United States are crazily sending orders. You know, although the copyright awareness in North America is not bad and it is almost impossible for paper copies to be pirated. But as time goes by and the demand is too strong, we can't guarantee that the scanned electronic files won't spread on the internet, which is likely to affect our profits. We also plan to increase the price of the ordinary edition to $59 and the deluxe edition to $119. In total, there is close to $200 million profit margin in this deal. Chen Guang's mouth twitched, and his eyes began to redden. No one would complain of too much money. He also realized something else. Although after last night's battle, he was one step closer to the statue of Best Actor, and there was a faint feeling of budding in his heart, the statue still hadn't appeared. Of course, the sooner the battle was over, the better. It was indeed necessary to solve the problem of the shortage of the world faction as soon as possible. He tried to look calm, but it was very difficult. Then we should increase the print run. But the price of the printers is really high. Chen Guang also sighed. The old man had been in the business for many years and had never suffered losses in silence. Could it be that he had no choice but to admit defeat under the corruption of capitalism? Forget it. How much do they want? Lu Xiaoyang said with a bitter face, we contacted several companies. The average price of the ordinary edition is about $48, and the deluxe edition is about $80, which is twice their actual cost. Chen Guang pounded the table. This is unacceptable. Lu Xiaoyang also felt that this was unacceptable, but he couldn't think of a good solution. Just as he was thinking about this, his cell phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was Yu Hong calling from China. It was past 9:00 in the evening there. He didn't know what Yu Hong was so urgent about. It's old Yu's call. Boss, I'll take it first. It's midnight in China. Lu Xiaoyang explained to Chen Guang and answered the call. What's up, old Yu? To make a long story short, I'm currently discussing something with my boss. On the phone, Yu Hong seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he still opened his mouth and said, there's a little situation in the country. Xiao Lu, don't be in a hurry to tell the boss. Chen Guang's ears were sharp, and he could hear everything clearly. With the old man's ears, did he even need to turn on the speaker? Yu Hong's sneaky, don't tell the boss, was as loud as thunder. They had rebelled. The team was too big, and the people's hearts were scattered. It was not easy to lead the team. Even an honest person like old Yu wanted to hide something from him. This was intolerable. Chen Guang snatched the phone from Lu Xiaoyang. Old Yu, what's up? Why can't you tell me? Boss, did you hear that? Yu Hong was embarrassed. Chen Guang snorted. Of course. My ears are sharp. But old Yu, don't worry. I won't blame you. We're working together, and I have 100% trust in all of you. If there's anything wrong with your work, we can talk about it. I'm easy to talk to. You should know me. Yu Hong hesitated for a while. That, boss, I'll tell you. Go ahead. Don't worry and speak boldly. Chen Guang looked as if he was a magnanimous person who wouldn't hold a grudge against a lowly person. After that, he turned on the hands-free mode and gave a hand gesture to Lu Xiaoyang before making a reassuring expression. His body language and expression were basically saying, we've been working together for a long time. As long as it's not an unforgivable mistake in principle, I won't argue with you. Actually, this is not our problem. Alright, we also have some problems. But it's more of your problem, boss. Yu Hong spouted a whole bunch of strange words. Chen Guang felt that there was a hidden meaning in Yu Hong's words. Can you stop with the tongue twister? Old Yu, why are you getting more and more dishonest? Chen Guang pretended to be angry. Yu Hong finally said helplessly. There's a problem with the publishing and distribution of the World School Performing Arts. Chen Guang was unhappy. What's wrong? We are robbing people in North America and asking for a high price. Are the printing factories in China doing the same? Yu Hong, no, no, no. This is not the case. It's another situation. Boss, the 10 million sets that you specifically mentioned before have all been printed, but the sales after the launch are a little awkward. How is that possible? Qin Guang was confused. He thought to himself that it was impossible. He was doing well in the foreigner's territory, and he was even out of stock. Why did his own people not buy it? What kind of world is this? Why are those evil trolls targeting me? Is there a limit to your worship of foreigners? As a fellow Chinese, I have succeeded. Why can't you see me doing well? The old man's plan to win the Best Actor award was based in China. How could this be? People's hearts are not what they used to be. It's sad and lamentable. Mr. Lu Sun once said, "Forget it. I won't quote the classics. Anyway, I've been tricked by my own people this time." Qin Guang was heartbroken. What is this? Old you don't know how popular World School Performing Arts is in North America. I really didn't expect that my family in China is dragging me down. Boss, it's not easy to sell the full English version in China. After all, it's difficult for ordinary readers to read it. Qin Guang's expression suddenly froze. Then he grabbed the phone and turned to look at Lu Xiaoyang. But face, is the full English version printed in China? Lu Xiaoyang nodded with a bitter face. That's right. Boss, you only wrote the English version. We were in a hurry to print it. You didn't even have time to translate it. We didn't have enough time to find someone else to translate it. We wanted to print a few copies first to test the waters, but you insisted that we print 10 million copies. The cost of printing in China is lower, but the total cost of 10 million copies is more than 200 million renminbi. Yu Hong was also saying something similar on the phone, but it was more practical. Well, boss, these printing houses only took part of the deposit from us because of the reputation of the Tianguang Group and the impressive box office of Women. But now all the books have been printed, and they are all piled up in the warehouse of our cooperative publishing house. The problem now is that on one hand, the publishing house wants us to take all the books away as soon as possible. On the other hand, the printing house also needs to pay the balance as soon as possible. But the booksellers all over the country are asking us to return the books. Many of our previous orders have been cancelled. The full English version is really not selling. Sigh. Qin Guang knew that things were not going well. This was King embarrassing. After all this time, it was not that his family had abandoned him. It was just that he had been hot-headed and arrogant. He did not pay enough attention to the details and forgot the most important thing. He took it for granted that he had created the magnificent feat of selling 10 million full English versions of academic monographs in China. As for why Yu Hong and Lu Xiaoyang did not dissuade him back then, Qin Guang could understand. When he decided to come to the United States to cause trouble, Qin Guang brainwashed others in all kinds of ways. He boasted about himself to be unparalleled in the world. That was not all. He was extremely tough and would do what he said. He did not accept any objections at all. In ancient times, he was even more stubborn than Xiang Yu the Conqueror. Furthermore, the four great warriors had brainwashed him and had inexplicably strong confidence in him. So, even if they felt that it was nonsense, they still believed in Qin Guang's nonsense. They thought that even if it was an English version, it might really be able to sell in China. So far, the boss had never made a wrong decision. Because of this, the 10 million copies of the Performing Arts monograph were published in China in the shortest time possible. It was released on a large scale in the market. Unfortunately, it turned out that selling combs to bald men, tampons to men, and Quan Zhilong's autographed posters to Wu Jing was not reliable at all. A few days had passed, and the total sales had not even exceeded 10,000 copies. It was impossible to sell them. So, the boss was not always right. It was normal to fall into a ditch once in a while. Just now, Yu Hong didn't mean to hide it from Qin Guang. Although the senior managers of the companies were partly responsible, Chen Guang was the one who made the biggest mistake. Yu Hong was worried about Chen Guang's reputation. He had planned to find another way to tell Chen Guang the bad news in a more artistic way. But now that his ears were so good that he could hear it from the side, there was nothing he could do. Seeing that Chen Guang was silent, Yu Hong thought he was blaming himself. So he comforted him, "Alas, boss, we are responsible for this. We didn't fulfill our duties and caused a great loss to the company." Seeing Chen Guang's serious face, Butt Face also took the blame. "Boss, don't worry. We will find a way to overcome this difficulty together." Chen Guang forced himself to stay calm and waved his hand. "This is not a difficulty at all. It's just 200 million yuan. Our movie makes so much money. It's just a drop in the bucket. Boss, it's 260 million yuan. On the phone, Yu Hong interrupted at an inopportune time. Chen Guang's hands trembled slightly. He was so sad that he couldn't put it into words. Looks like this old man's illustrious reputation is going to be ruined in a day. What a scam. If it was another boss, he would have thrown the blame on the table immediately. Why didn't you remind me earlier? However, Chen Guang was not used to shirking his responsibility. Before he came to the United States, he had been furious because his colleagues always undermined him. When he decided to print 10 million sets, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang also questioned him. He was so obsessed with the pleasure of acting tough that he lost his mind. He didn't give them any room to object. However, it was useless to regret now. His loss was even more painful than buying the Tongshan industrial plant for 170 million yuan. This was the disadvantage of getting richer and richer. When he was poor, he made a stupid mistake and was cheated online. The loss was only about 1,000 yuan. Now he was so rich that his loss was as high as 260 million yuan because of his carelessness. Although he was making money on the movie side, it was sad to lose money on the other side. He forced himself to stay awake. Ha ha ha, this is a small matter. Don't worry about the details. I let go of the microphone and yawned, but my mind was spinning rapidly as I tried to think of a way to escape. Faced with this situation, how should I turn the tide? He could admit that he lost money, but he couldn't admit that he lost money. This would stain his glorious image in the eyes of his employees. He must think of a way to turn the tide as soon as possible. Suddenly, his mind seemed to be enlightened. Ding dong. I got it. The Chen Guang in Lu Xiaoyang's eyes suddenly stopped frowning. Not only that, the corners of his eyes began to bend slightly, and his mouth began to smile. What kind of smile is this? Chen Guang's expression reminded Lu Xiaoyang of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms that he had read many years ago. In the story, Zhuge Liang, who was thousands of miles away, won the battle. The Prime Minister didn't even hide the truth from his own people when he tricked them with his amazing plan. When everything was settled, Prime Minister Zhuge, who even tricked his own people, would show an expression that said, "Ha, you idiots. You didn't expect this, did you? Let the old man tell you everything in detail. That's right. Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic at all." Chen Guang finally spoke once more. His voice was filled with vigor. He waved his hand generously. "Lao Yu, Butt Face, you are all not. Yes. Panic. Everything is under control. To tell you the truth, this old man, oh no, this is my preparation for a rainy day. This is exactly what I want." Ha, you were shocked just now, right? Did I do a good job? Lu Xiaoyang and Yu Hong, who was on the other side of the phone, were at a loss. They didn't understand what Chen Guang, their boss, was going to do this time. Chen Guang wiped the sweat off his forehead. He felt that it was even more tiring than acting as Romeo to trick Butt Face into the role. As expected, art comes from life, and life is better than art. Lu Xiaoyang and Yu Hong said almost at the same time, "Boss, what's going on?" Chen Guang said with an enigmatic smile, to be honest, I have expected all this. I plan to print 10 million copies of the English version in China. But face, have you forgotten? We have run out of stock in North America. We haven't even started to publish it in Europe. Now the printing houses in North America are taking advantage of us, right? I have planned to transport 10 million copies from China to North America and sell them in North America. When Chen Guang spoke, his face was brimming with confidence and pride. He was waiting for Lu Xiaoyang to change his expression to that of worship. Lu Xiaoyang clasped his hands together and said, "Boss, you can predict the future. Boss, you can win 1,000 miles away." Unexpectedly, Lu Xiaoyang scratched his head. "Well, 10,000 tons of books can only be shipped by sea. We can charter a fast ship, which can reach Los Angeles in about 3 weeks. But there is a problem." Chen Guang's heart missed a beat. What's the problem? Although it is a full English edition, it is still a domestic publication. It is fine if only 1 or 2 copies are shipped over in small quantities, but there are 10 million copies. The North American Publishing Office will not approve it, and the U.S. Department of Commerce will not approve it either. We are suspected of dumping. Yu Hong was also saying the same thing on the phone. Chen Guang was cursing in his heart, but he couldn't show it. He was still very calm. "Comrade Lu, I have a way to solve your problem. It is also within my consideration. Where there is a will, there is a way. Haha, haha, you go ahead with your work. I will prepare the teaching materials for tomorrow's lecture." After saying that, Chen Guang drove Lu Xiaoyang away. When Lu Xiaoyang left, he sat down on the chair and rubbed his hands. "I can't admit this loss. I have to find a way. 260 million. In other words, that was only the cost. If these books were sold to the US, they would be worth 600 million US dollars. That was huge profits. Chen Guang wouldn't have thought of this if he hadn't made that mistake. But now, he had to use his brain. Chapter 11:21. Half an hour later, Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu came up with a temporary solution. First, they will promote overseas purchasing in the US. They will tell the rest of the world, especially the English-speaking audiences, that there are tens of millions of English versions of the World Faction on sale in China. It's not only the Chinese who buy overseas products. Foreigners can also buy Chinese products. If you are in a hurry and want to see the secrets of the World Faction, don't hesitate to pick up your phone and call the purchasing hotline. Shun Feng oversees direct plane delivery to your home. Other than that, you can also log into Amazon. There are many global merchants waiting for you there. This is knowledge, and the earlier you buy it, the earlier you can stand out from the crowd. What? Someone thinks the $10 postage is too expensive? This must be because your pursuit of acting is not strong enough, and you are not loyal enough to the world's best actor. Lu Xiaoyang reported this idea to Chen Guang, and Chen Guang did not comment on it. He will sell as much as he can first. The cost of shipping by air was indeed too high, and the company couldn't afford it. If the cost was shared among all the consumers, and the consumers had to bear it themselves, it was indeed a good solution. However, the quantity should not be too large. Selling hundreds of thousands of sets from overseas was probably the limit. Fine. Let's do it this way. I have no objections, but this is not my main idea. You all go ahead. After hanging up the call with Lu Xiaoyang, Chen Guang secretly called Tang Xiaokai about this matter. Tang Xiaokai's reply is the same. It is not difficult to ship the goods over. The difficult part is how to legally sell the goods in North America. Lu Xiaokai can help by using his connections with the U.S. Department of Commerce. But the results are not guaranteed. Their international friends were very strange. When they found you pleasing to the eye, or when you were selling rare resources, such as rare earth minerals, they would never talk about anti-dumping with you. No matter how many you bring, they will buy the same amount without any hesitation. But if it is a finished product or a cultural publication, they will have thousands of rules to explain to you. It is hard to deal with. No matter who it was, they didn't care about connections, they only cared about money. 10 million sets of Huaxia's publications were shipped to the US, which meant that the US publishing and printing market would be hit hard. It meant that the US's GDP of hundreds of millions of US dollars would disappear out of thin air. The United States also has workers, and American workers also have to eat and drink. With so much GDP evaporated, the businesses here would lose a lot of revenue. Their publishing and printing industries would be affected, and many people would lose a lot of income. This was a very long-term effect. On the way here, Chen Guang had received the guest list sent to him by the staff of the Huaxia Theater. Compared to the incomparably cold premiere 10 days ago, today was like a starry night. The difference was like heaven and earth. Just by counting the names on the list and placing them on the paper, one would be greeted by a dazzling light that could blind one's eyes. For this handover ceremony, the dignified owner of the Huaxia Theater, a veteran of the North American film industry, Donald Joshtan, had gone all out. He had used his connections to sell his face and reputation. Not only that, other senior members of the Film Association, including James Sr., Foreman, Damon, and even Malfoy Bentler, had come forward to make up for the cold shoulder they had given to Chen Guang previously and to repair the relationship between the two parties. After Donald had issued an open invitation to Chen Guang, they had all come up with ideas and made phone calls to rope him in. With these people's qualifications, those who could make them call to invite him would definitely not be small fries. Other than a few people who were all over the world or those who had matters to attend to, basically everyone who received the call would give face to them. There was even a situation where this happened to a good crew and they had to stop filming for the next 2 days. The director brought the entire cast to Los Angeles, planning to attend Chen Guang's handover ceremony today and then attend Chen Guang's public lecture after the ceremony at the World Film Hall of Fame the next day. Stopping filming for 2 days would, of course, result in a huge increase in the cost of filming. The explanation given by these directors to the investors was simple. In the ancient Huaxia saying, sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. They did not come here just to support Chen Guang. Their main purpose was to attend Chen Guang's public lecture and see if they could get their hands on a few copies of The World's Faction that were hard to come by on the market. They did all this to improve the acting skills of the main cast and also to improve their understanding of movies as a director. Everyone's ultimate goal was to make the movie better. What? Boss, why don't we buy The World's Faction ourselves and wait for the video materials for his public lecture? Stop fooling around. First of all, where are we going to buy The World's Faction now? Rob it? Secondly, can the effect of watching the video materials be compared to listening to the lecture live? Do you still want our movie to be good or not? Look at Women. There's nothing special about the script and the main cast. It's even in Mandarin with English subtitles, but what about the box office performance? Why don't we learn from them? Do you still want to get rich? With such a good reason, the investors could not say anything and could only let it go. There were already 3 complete main cast teams here, and there would be 5 more before the ceremony started. Old James patted Chen Guang's shoulder happily. Don't thank me. This is our duty and what we should do. Let's go and say hello to everyone. Surrounded by the 2 of them, Chen Guang went straight to the large banquet hall in the Huaxia Theater. Looking around, there was indeed a gathering of celebrities. There were familiar names everywhere, huddled together and whispering to each other. There were people from the entertainment industry, celebrities from the business world, and even some big shots in the political world. Seeing that Chen Guang had arrived, these people turned their heads and waved at Chen Guang enthusiastically. Basically, the National Film Association represented the mainstream attitude of the European and American mainstream towards Chen Guang. Chen Guang had gained the recognition of these people, which was equivalent to breaking into the mainstream values of North America in one fell swoop. Chen Guang had not officially won the Oscar, and the Best Actor award had not been settled yet. It had not been easy for him to make a comeback, so for the time being, he had to save some face for these people who had destroyed his stage. Even if they wanted to settle the score later, he had to endure it first and wait until everything was settled. With this thought in mind, he was also very enthusiastic, greeting everyone who came. The scene looked very harmonious and warm. As for these people who were holding champagne to toast him, Chen Guang drank as much as they came. He was very vigorous. As a dignified martial sage, he would not even faint when taking a bath in erguotu, not to mention champagne. In the process of these European and American celebrities contacting Chen Guang, they also changed their previous prejudices against him. How was he arrogant? How was he arrogant? With such high artistic achievements, he was so young, yet he was so polite and well-spoken. How rare was that? This was completely different from the reputation that he had shown in the past. It was not at all like what others had criticized him in the past, that he was arrogant after achieving success and looked down on others. He was both gentlemanly and calm. In particular, his aristocratic medieval English accent was simply charming, causing the eyes of many socialites to light up. There were also some international friends, such as the French, German, and Spanish, who had mastered several languages, and English was only a second language. Out of curiosity, they spoke the languages of their respective countries with Chen Guang, but Chen Guang accepted them all. He was able to communicate with people in every language, and his pronunciation was as accurate as that of a national broadcaster. These European and American celebrities had never seen such a demeanor, and they were all stunned. His skills were extraordinary, but his attitude was amiable, neither servile or overbearing, and he had a graceful demeanor. It had completely refreshed the inherent image of the Chinese in their hearts. Admittedly, when he had first come to the United States, the heroic words that he had said were a little arrogant, but in retrospect, he was clearly low-key and humble. If they had his ability and acting skills, they would probably want to move the Oscar to their own home. After chatting with everyone for a while, Chen Guang found a table with old James and sat down. Along the way, he had heard many people complain about the problem of wanting to buy World's Faction, including many directors and professors of film schools who wanted to buy World's Faction Performing Arts in bulk as teaching materials, but they could not buy it at all. They urged Chen Guang to change the current situation. Chen Guang was also heartbroken. 10 million sets were placed in his house, and countless people were waving their US dollars, waiting to pay for them, but they could not buy them. He was anxious. Sigh. Chen Guang let out a long sigh. Old James asked, "Mr. Chen, why are you sighing?" Chen Guang changed the topic. "It's nothing. By the way, Mr. Watson, how many days until the Hollywood primaries?" Old James thought that he was worried about the Oscar and comforted him. "There's still half a month, but don't worry, Mr. Chen. It'll be fine." Chen Guang asked again, "What about the award?" Old James looked left and right like a thief, then whispered into Chen Guang's ear, "Mr. Chen, I'll tell you about this for now. Please don't tell anyone else." "Okay, I'm listening." "No problem." Chen Guang asked again, then, "Can we announce the news in advance?" Based on past experience, the normal Oscar announcement would be in March. There were still more than 2 months left, and he was really anxious. Old James shook his head like a rattle drum. "That won't do. There has never been such a precedent for the Oscars. And you know, although the jury has been criticized all these years, we really have a fair and open vote every time. Before the people from PricewaterhouseCoopers hand the envelope to the guest presenter, and the guest presenter opens the envelope in front of the global audience, even the current Fred, or the past me, will not know who will win. Is that so?" "Sigh, then there's no other way." Chen Guang sighed again and stopped struggling. He knew that he was being a bit too much. He had already done it, but he still had to wait for more than 2 months in vain. This made him very sad. After waiting for more than 2 hours, this long-awaited and exceptionally grand ceremony was finally completed successfully under the watchful eyes of everyone. After the ceremony, it was naturally a grand reception. This was also a daily social event in Europe and the United States, but but it was not broadcast to the public. There was no doubt that Chen Guang was still the focus of the crowd. Today was a festival that belonged to him. Chen Guang socialized with people with a heavy heart, but not many people could see that he was full of sadness. Finally, around 9 o'clock in the evening, someone finally came from outside. This person's identity made his eyes light up. Dwayne Brown, the director of the National Bureau of Publishing, came side by side with President Fred of the Motion Picture Association. Fred had just finished his work at the association and happened to have an appointment with Dwayne, his elementary school classmate, who had come to Los Angeles for business. In China, the director of the National Bureau of Publishing was roughly equivalent to the level of a deputy minister in China. He was on the same level as Chen Guang before he resigned. After Director Brown arrived, many people greeted him. After some simple greetings, he stood in front of Chen Guang, led by President Fred. Chapter 11:22. Mr. Chen, let me introduce you. This is my elementary school classmate, Dwayne Brown, the director of the United States Publishing Administration. Dwayne, do you need me to introduce you to Mr. Chen? Director Brown pinched his chin and looked at Chen Guang with a smile. He extended his hand enthusiastically. Mr. Chen, nice to meet you. Chen Guang was overjoyed and squeezed Director Brown's hand. What the F***CK, what is this? A heavenly soldier descending from the heavens? Could it be that my hidden skill is the legendary lucky star, and I get what I lack? Sure enough, I have the protagonist's halo. It's my destiny. The more he thought about it, the more satisfied he was, and the harder he squeezed Director Brown's hand. Director Brown's hand was squeezed tightly, and he swayed it back and forth. However, Chen Guang only shook hands with him and did not speak. Director Brown looked up and found that Chen Guang's eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He obviously wanted to eat him. What was going on? He had never heard of this great artist from Huaxia, Mr. Chen, who was a great scholar, having such tendencies. Mr. Chen? Director Brown reminded him with a red face and tried to pull his hand out. However, with Chen Guang's strength, it was impossible for Dwayne Brown to break free. Chen Guang reacted first. Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, I forgot myself. I'm very happy to meet you. No, I'm very, very happy. About half an hour later, Dwayne Brown finally understood why Chen Guang had lost his composure. Chen Guang was more than 10 times more enthusiastic toward him than anyone else. He chased after him the whole time, chatting with him whenever he had the chance. Finally, his fox's tail was exposed. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Director Brown also understood this principle from Huaxia, so he simply asked directly. Chen Guang knew that it was difficult to do such a big thing under the table with the way things were done in Europe and the United States. It was impossible for 10 million sets of publications to flow into America without causing a commotion, and it was impossible that it had nothing to do with the director of the United States Publishing Administration. It was unrealistic to expect Director Brown, whom he had just met, to take some money and secretly stir up trouble. China was fighting corruption, and so was Europe and the US. Brown would not take the risk of being imprisoned and offend those publishing and printing companies who were trying to take advantage of him. These companies were backed by large media groups. Touching their money was equivalent to touching their lives. In the democratic land, the influence of business owners and large financial groups on the political world was even stronger than in Huaxia. So, Chen Guang simply said it in front of everyone. First, he talked about how shameless those unscrupulous printing companies were. Then, he asked Director Brown if he could sell books from China here. Brown shook his head vigorously. That's impossible. Mr. Chen, I will never agree to your request. Heaven knows how serious the protests will be. It will be fiercely boycotted by the Amalgamated Publishing Union. Not to mention me, even the president doesn't have such a right. Chen Guang looked at this guy and thought to himself. He really wanted to force him into a PY deal. Aren't you talking nonsense? Of course, I know that. I'm asking you to see if there are any loopholes in the system that I can exploit. President Fred, who was next to him, interrupted, Dwayne, is there no other way? I think Mr. Chen's idea is very good. You don't know this, but more than 2/3 of the people in the Film Association have not been able to buy a copy of World's Pie, let alone ordinary people. Those publishing and printing companies are violating the law of the market and maliciously raising prices. They are hindering the progress of civilization. On the other side, the dean of the Southern California Academy of Motion Picture Arts nodded. President Fred is right. If it weren't for the fact that we don't want to profane knowledge, the students in our school would want to infringe and make copies themselves. This matter has made us very miserable. As far as I know, it's not just me. Many film and television universities in the U.S. are calling for the same thing. The dean of the Los Angeles University School of Performing Arts also poked his head in from the side. It's not just you. The students in ordinary universities are also very anxious. This morning, 2 students from our school's physics school fought over a copy of World's Pie. Seeing that his international friends were speaking up for him, Chen Guang struck while the iron was hot. Director Brown, look, these are the voices of the masses. Those companies that are asking for sky-high prices have simply lost their conscience. If it weren't for them raising the prices crazily to the point of making us lose money, we would have satisfied everyone's needs long ago. You also know that my World's Pie's price is very low, and there is almost no profit. Other similar academic monographs on the market start at $150. Look at mine, I have no intention of relying on publishing to make money, but they still want to suck my blood. This hurts me so much. That's right. Evil capitalist entrepreneurs. A shameless businessman who has lost his conscience for money and stinks of money. For their own interests, they are harming civilization and art. We can't let them succeed. Hearing the criticism from the people around him, Chen Guang nearly forgot that he was in the United States. Those that weren't in the know might even think that he was in the Paris Commune from decades ago. How great was the sentiment of the Soviet Union? They were all allies. Dwayne Brown was besieged. President Fred did not expect Chen Guang to stir up trouble with just a few words. He tried to smooth things over and ease the atmosphere. Dwayne, after all, Mr. Chen has just left his handprint on the wall with great figures like Chaplin and Martin Luther King. Otherwise, given his great achievements, is there any special channel to consider? Director Brown felt helpless. Okay, I have an idea. We can try to list the World's Pie Performing Arts as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage, and then put this monograph into a special channel for academic introduction. This way, we can avoid the relevant regulations of the General Administration of Publishing and the Ministry of Commerce, but we will still have to pay a considerable amount of taxes to compensate the publishing industry. World Intangible Cultural Heritage. Chen Guang's eyes lit up. That's possible. The taxes can't be higher than the cost of printing in North America, right? He really wanted to take a selfie with his phone and post it on Weibo. Accompanying the text, Living World Cultural Heritage. The taxes shouldn't exceed $100 million, but it's very difficult to become a World Cultural Heritage, Mr. Chen. Director Brown said again. Chen Guang asked, why is it difficult? Director Brown shrugged. You know, the approval of World Cultural Heritage is very strict. Irma Watson, who had been eavesdropping, finally couldn't help but interrupt. Is it because Mr. Chen is still alive, so it can't be considered a heritage? Shut up. Irma. James Sr. covered Irma Watson's mouth. Chen Guang felt that Irma's words made sense, and he couldn't refute them at all. He felt that it was necessary to hang himself and make the heritage a real one. Well, the price was a little too high. It was a big loss. Chen Guang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then what should I do? Director Brown thought for a moment. How about this, Mr. Chen, don't you have a public lecture tomorrow? You can apply to UNESCO now, and I'll arrange it at the same time. You'll be teaching here, and an expert from the headquarters will evaluate it online. After that, we'll hold a week-long global public vote, and the final online public vote and expert review will be considered. What do you think? No problem. President Fred interrupted. But Mr. Chen, how are the preparation of your materials? Won't this be a little too much pressure for you to teach? Chen Guang waved his hand. This is nothing. It's a piece of cake. After discussing with everyone, they disbanded at around 10 p.m. Before leaving, Chen Guang counted on his fingers. The whole process that Director Brown said would take about 8 or 9 days. But this wasn't important. He could start in China tonight. Regardless of the consequences, whether it would succeed or not, he had to start pulling people in. As long as Dwayne Brown made an opening, it meant that things could be done. It was better than the previous situation where he had no idea where to start. According to this man's words, it seemed that the United UNESCO was something that the US government could deeply interfere with. Forget it. This was a little complicated. Now that the old man was out of the picture, there was no need to care about these details. Back at the Flemington Hotel, Chen Guang first asked Lu Xiaoyang to inform Yu Hong not to ask or say anything. Find a ship now, the kind that could pull 10,000 tons and was extremely fast. It would be best if it could ride the wind and waves with sparks and lightning along the way, and sail at a speed of 70 knots. Well, this wasn't very realistic. China's warships could reach this speed, but the US would not agree. The old men had their own opinions. Finally, Yu Hong set his sights on a luxury cruise ship that had just completed repairs at the port of embarkation and happened to be vacant. It could reach a speed of more than 30 knots. The cost of making such a cruise ship go straight from China's port of embarkation to Los Angeles was as high as millions of dollars, but it was not a problem. It wasn't until the ship was ready that Chen Guang could set off the day after tomorrow at the latest that he felt at ease. He immediately went online and was very satisfied with the almost one-sided public opinion on the internet and TV. After these days of crazy tossing and turning, there was the amazing performance in Brosnan's cafe, the perfect interpretation of Romeo and Juliet, followed by the 1900 Wave March, followed by the Wall of Signatures, which was the first wall where almost no more candidates were added. Coupled with the continuous rise of women and the increasing reputation of Chen Guang's reputation was rapidly rising, both domestically and internationally. The international clamor to directly award the Best Actor Oscar to Chen Guang was also getting louder and louder. It had only taken him half a month to completely crush The Sunshine Man and July in Florence, which had taken nearly half a year to warm up and invest so much time and energy in the promotion, not to mention the other competitors in the same period. Faced with the social media comments praising him one after another, Chen Guang was so addicted to the likes that he couldn't extricate himself. This was a movie lover with attitude. What kind of situation is this? President Fred and old James are really not in the mood. Why the hell are they voting? If you're a man, you should just give me the Best Actor Oscar. Oh, look at this. He glanced at William Jones's speech that the system had automatically recommended to him. After seeing Chen Guang's Romeo and Juliet live, I couldn't help but become his fanatic fan. I admit that I have been disrespectful to him in the past, and I feel uneasy about it. But I can't deny that I have worked hard for many years to be recognized by the Oscars. This is a dream that I have established since I was 5 years old. This time, after filming The Sunshine Man, I almost thought that I had half a hand on the Oscars' legs. But now I've changed my mind. I even want to withdraw from the competition right now, even if the nominations have not yet begun. This year's Oscar can only belong to the Chinese, Chen Guang, the greatest international performing artist. Not long after, another competitor, Ben Affleck, also straightforwardly reposted William Jones's tweet. Chen Guang was instantly speechless. Back then, these two guys had poured dog blood on his face. If it weren't for the fact that they definitely couldn't beat him, they would have probably fought back then. At today's autograph ceremony, these two didn't show up. Apparently, they had returned to Los Angeles together. Chen Guang had thought that the admiration in these two's eyes the night before was fake. He didn't expect them to suddenly do this on social media. Less than 20 minutes later, they seemed to have reached an agreement after an urgent discussion. The official Twitter accounts of Sunshine and July, including the two main leads, William and Bent, as well as the respective social media accounts of the directors of the two movies, all updated with explosive news at the same time. Sunshine and July officially announced that they would withdraw from this year's Oscar competition. Chen Guang couldn't believe it himself. So straightforward? You guys probably know that you're going to lose for sure and are afraid of embarrassing yourself, so you might as well just accept your fate, right? The sudden decision of the two big Oscars once again set off a wave of public opinion. Chen Guang didn't pay any more attention to it. Instead, he returned to his bed and lay comfortably until the next morning. Before falling asleep, he couldn't help but think, the other 10 or so competitors this year are a little thick-skinned. If I were you guys, I would admit defeat along with Sunshine. Those stronger than you guys are all cowering. At least you guys have some self-awareness. Let me become the uncrowned king as soon as possible. At least I'll be able to get my hands on the statue first. That way, I won't have to wait anxiously, right? The next morning, Chen Guang woke up early. He was washing up when he received a call from Dwayne Brown. After an intense night of work, UNESCO finally gave a positive response. A 17-member expert team had been urgently formed. They would watch and review the live broadcast of the public lecture in one of the conference rooms at the headquarters in Manhattan, New York. If they passed today's preliminary examination, they would be able to enter the voting phase of the global referendum. In addition, the UNESCO office in Los Angeles would also send a commissioner to attend Chen Guang's public lecture. Of course, these things were easy to say, but they cost money like running water. Chen Guang waved his hand. This was nothing. Chapter 1123. It was different from doing similar things in China. For example, if one wanted to get permission from the SARFT, the fee would be low on the surface, but behind the scenes, the cost would be at least hundreds of thousands of yuan, or even tens of millions of yuan. Because of this, many people criticized the corruption in China, saying that foreigners had a brighter moon. Chen Guang used his own experience to prove that this was all bullshit. They might not have done anything behind the scenes, but they had clearly marked the price. Just like the UNESCO certification review meeting, the 17 experts took an Uber from their homes to the conference room at the headquarters to sit down and talk. They reported a budget on the spot. They did not hide it at all. The total funding for the project and organization activities was $1.7 million. Do you have to be so *king honest? Are you afraid that I don't know that you all get a share? If I were a poorer person, this thing would have definitely fallen through. Fortunately, Chen Guang was rich and overbearing. As long as it was something that could be settled with money, it wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, there was still money left. Chen Guang immediately asked Fang Tianyu, who was in Princeton, to transfer the money. After that, he cleaned up and put 2 books under his armpit. He went downstairs and went straight to the headquarters of the American Film Association. For Chen Guang, this place was not special or sacred. However, for the entire North American region and even the world's new filmmakers, this place was full of mystery. Many people even regarded this place as a holy land in their hearts. This was not surprising. Many people who were dedicated to the performing arts were not qualified to set foot on the marble stairs in front of this Baroque building. Almost everyone who appeared here was a famous person in the film industry. Almost every major decision that was closely related to the development of the global film industry came from the conference room in this building. Apart from that, every filmmaker regarded it as a lifelong honor to be able to hold a lecture here. So far, even many Oscar winners have not received such an honor. However, today, when Chen Guang stepped out of the car, the the dense crowd standing on the stairs burst into applause. Fred, the current president, old James, the former president, and even the white-haired former president, the former president, who had been renowned since the 1960s, were among the people waiting outside the door. Fred was the current president, the former president, who had difficulty standing, and was an old man who had been renowned in the world since the 1960s. He was now nearly 100 years old, but he also came after watching World School Performing Arts. Chen Guang did not expect the American Film Association to give him such a grand welcome ceremony. Although he did not know most of the people here, he saw that Fred and old James could not stand in the middle of the crowd. He knew that the status of the people here was not small. Not far away, flashes rang out. There was no need for the Motion Picture Association to send invitations to the media, and they would naturally flock over. Not to mention that the most important guest today was the Chinese, Chen Guang, who had been a hot topic recently. Media people from all over the world had to eat, both in China and abroad. There was even a rumor in the media circle that whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang in the bathroom would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang helping the poor would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang masturbating would become a millionaire. Chen Guang waved enthusiastically at the people and walked straight to President Fred and the others. Everyone chatted for a while and then quickly got to the point. The conference hall was already full of people. Chen Guang, President Fred, and old James were having a simple conversation backstage. Fred pointed to a person in the crowd outside and asked, "Mr. Chen, the person sitting in the second row is a staff member of UNESCO. Do you want to greet him first?" Chen Guang thought about it and shook his head. "No need. By the way, President Fred, will my public lecture be broadcasted live in the United States today?" Fred nodded. "Yes, it will. This is both an award ceremony for the World Film Hall of Fame and your public lecture. Over there is a live broadcast staff from ABC, over there is NBC, and on the other side is Fox. Oh, by the way, UBC, which has been working well with you. We've given them the best live broadcast seats. Thank you very much." In fact, he could have collected a lot of copyright fees today, but Chen Guang was eager to spread his influence and did not care about the money. On the other side, old James was a little uneasy. "Mr. Chen, where are your lesson plans?" Old James had been carefully looking at the two books under Chen Guang's armpit. He looked left and right and saw that they were the hardcover edition of World Faction, which was publicly available on the market. Chen Guang smiled and pointed to his head. "Here." "Huh." Fred and old James were a little confused for a moment. They wondered if Chen Guang was being too casual. With a smile, Chen Guang continued, "Let me tell the two of you something. I didn't take more than 5 days to finish writing these two books." "What?" Fred and old James exclaimed in unison. "Impossible." The two of them added. Chen Guang only smiled mysteriously. "When you reach my level, you will understand what it means to have everything at your fingertips. My understanding of acting, in fact, these two books only scratched the surface." As Chen Guang spoke, he patted the two books in his hands and stuffed them into old James's hands. "Mr. Watson, since many people haven't bought them yet, why don't you give these two books away? So, shall we start now?" Although Fred was still in shock, he subconsciously felt that Chen Guang would not brag about this. There was no need for that. "Okay, Mr. Chen, let's go." The two walked out side by side. After a few steps, President Fred said, "Mr. Chen, there are actually 2 standards for the World Film Hall of Fame." Chen Guang was stunned. 2 standards? Fred nodded. "Yes, one of them is to hang a portrait over there and leave a name and a brief introduction below." Fred pointed to the wall of the large conference room. Chen Guang glanced over and saw nearly 100 oil paintings hanging on both sides. They looked very much like Newton in his physics textbook when he was in middle school. Chen Guang felt that he's still alive, and he's still so young. Yet, his portrait was placed here for others to reminisce about, and it's rather disgusting. What about the other one? He felt that it was better to change his way of thinking. Fred said, I don't know if Mr. Chen noticed when you got out of the car just now, but there are a total of 9 bronze statues outside our headquarters. Chen Guang nodded. I noticed. These 9 statues are actually recognized by filmmakers all over the world. They are the 9 predecessors who made the greatest contributions to the art of film since its birth. Including Stanislavski, who single-handedly created the C family performance system. We believe that your cosmopolitan performance art is indeed superior to the current expressionist, methodological, and experiential styles. Your personal achievements are comparable to Stanislavski's, so of course you are also qualified to have a statue. Chen Guang almost fell to the ground. Damn, after thinking about it, he felt that it would be better to hang a portrait on the wall. That's a bit. I'm still alive. Chen Guang said. Fred chuckled. Mr. Chen, maybe this is what you Chinese are particular about. But in America, in Los Angeles, it's normal for a city hero who is supported by the whole city to have his own statue. You can go outside the Staples Center and take a look. Shaquille O'Neal's statue has just been completed, and Kobe Bryant's statue will be completed soon. Before that, there were statues of West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Johnson, and Hearn. Only then did Chen Guang feel relieved, is that so? But considering your age and the wide range of hobbies you have shown in the past, everyone felt that it was likely that you would lose interest in movies after you won an Oscar. So, when Damon proposed to erect a statue for you, there were still some objections within our association. After all, the Lakers are just the Lakers of Los Angeles, and the American Film Association is the temple of the entire world of movies. Chen Guang was speechless at President Fred's keen eyes. They were right. After getting the statue of the god of acting, he would only make movies if he was bored out of his mind. So be it. It doesn't matter. So, just this morning, we came to an agreement. Please go ahead. Mr. Chen, if your public lecture today can be further improved on the basis of these 2 books, and your cosmopolitan performance art can become a world intangible cultural heritage, then of course it will have been recognized by the world. Then, of course, we should erect a statue for you. Is that so? Then. Okay then. In fact, Chen Guang didn't care much about the statue. This wasn't the statue in his own world in a cup. It was nothing more than a symbol. This even reminded him of the statue of the Lord of the Earth that was still standing in the Tongshan industrial factory. It had the same effect, and it was very disgusting. At 10:00 in the morning, this might be called the most important lesson in the history of the performing arts finally began. More than 2,000 filmmakers from all over the world sat in the conference hall. They had a variety of skin colors and ages. Before this, each of them might have had their own different understanding of movies. For example, Big Beard Deng and Shi Changhe, who were too embarrassed to tell Chen Guang that they had quietly hidden in the crowd. However, after today, perhaps not everyone would become a complete cosmopolitan. They would still have their own styles. But on top of their original style, it was inevitable that they would be covered with a layer of characteristics that only belonged to the world faction. From now on, the world's 3 major performing arts systems would be merged into one, leaving only the cosmopolitan. But the cosmopolitan would inevitably be divided into several parts. For example, when it came to actors, there would be the expressive cosmopolitan, the methodological cosmopolitan, and the experiential cosmopolitan. When it came to directors, there would be different ideas. Chen Guang summarized the knowledge he had learned from the world in a cup without reservation through this public class. The knowledge he showed was broad and profound, all-encompassing, but rigorous and reasonable. Finally, in the evening, the huge conference hall was filled with thunderous applause. Chen Guang's 8-hour cosmopolitan public class officially ended. Chen Guang opened his arms and enjoyed the countless admiring eyes from below the stage. He seemed to be able to smell the statue in his nose. Soon, it was really soon. That night, on the homepage of the official website of UNESCO, a huge headline appeared. A global referendum on the application of the cosmopolitan intangible cultural heritage was officially held. 7 days later, at noon, the global referendum came to an end with a total of 847,217 votes, with 99% of the votes in favor. UNESCO announced the referendum on the spot. 2 hours later, it was officially announced that the cosmopolitan performing arts had become the world's intangible cultural heritage. Chen Guang was still alive, but he already had the heritage. Chapter 11:24. There was no point in staying in Los Angeles anymore. Chen Guang flew to Princeton again, mainly to help Zhuo Jingxi solve some problems with photocatalysis. Although teacher Zhuo had a deep understanding of the 5 God-level formulas after enjoying the double PY transaction, she was still a bit of a cramming method of teaching. Although she had some details in her mind, she still needed some time to summarize them as a whole. By making this trip, Chen Guang could more or less save some time. Unfortunately, he didn't get what he wanted in a certain aspect. He didn't know if Zhuo Jingxi was doing it on purpose or if she was really addicted to it. While Chen Guang was in Princeton, she simply lived in the laboratory and didn't go out at all. A fly couldn't bite a seamless egg. The night before the World Pie cruise arrived in Los Angeles, Chen Guang returned to Los Angeles. Time passed bit by bit. After all, he cared more about the acting god statue. Another 4 days passed. During this period, with Los Angeles as the starting point, tens of millions of copies of World School Performing Arts spread across the United States like a wave. The publishers who tried to take advantage of Chen Guang finally realized that the situation was not good. They were furious and filed a lawsuit against Chen Guang. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Commissioner Brown took out a list of documents and laid them on the table. No one dared to say anything against it. Then the United Publishing Union went to the Ministry of Commerce, trying to get the Ministry of Commerce to take the lead in filing a lawsuit against Chen Guang, accusing him of smuggling, dumping, and other crimes. However, the Ministry of Commerce reacted very quickly. Even halfway through the cruise, 2 of the pro-China officials in the Ministry of Commerce had already contacted the Baker law firm with Tang Xiaokai's help, and they had made preparations in advance for the upcoming war. The documents from the Publishing Union arrived at the Ministry of Commerce that day. The next morning, the Ministry of Commerce's public reply was sent out like lightning. The Ministry of Commerce's response was the same as the General Administration of Publishing, responding to the Publishing Union's questions one by one. In the end, the attitude of the Ministry of Commerce was clear and its position was clear. Chen Guang had personally shipped the World School Performing Arts monograph from Huaxia. Not only did it not violate the relevant laws, but it was also a generous act committed to spreading the intangible cultural heritage. Moreover, as an academic monograph, Chen Guang's price was relatively low, which was completely different from smuggling, which was a huge profit. It was full of internationalism, and there was no reason to criticize him in terms of legal principles and reason. Although the Ministry of Commerce was not necessarily a monolithic organization, and the main ideology was still anti-Chinese, the pro-Chinese faction moved too quickly, not even giving the others time to react. Furthermore, although the entire operation process happened very quickly and abruptly, it was completely tenable. Unless the current Special Passage Treaty on the world's intangible cultural heritage was amended, there was no other way. No one could stop the 10 million sets of World School Performing Arts from spreading like a virus across the United States. The members of the Publishing Union had no other choice but to bite the bullet. In the end, they had no choice but to reluctantly accept this cruel reality. Fortunately, the high taxes paid by Chen Guang soothed their hurt feelings. If it was in the past, asking Chen Guang to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes was equivalent to asking for his life. But now, Tianguang Group can make a net profit of nearly $700 million from the global box office. Even if Jean Shirua and Jiang Yage's companies are excluded, Qin Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. Tianguang media should share the income, and Qin Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. This was no pressure at all. Now that the box office share had been gradually returned to the account, it was currently in the distribution company opened by Tang Xiao. Qin Guang asked someone to transfer it out and directly paid the bill. In addition, Qin Guang did not completely fall out with the National Publishing Union after all. In the past, Demi often used to give others some benefits. Now, Qin Guang was giving them a taste of their own medicine. The order for 1 million sets of deluxe editions was still given to them, but of course, the price was not as crazy as before. They even got a discount of 10% more than usual. The reason was very simple. To make a statue of God, what they really needed was a large number of ordinary editions. The deluxe edition was purely for profit. Others cared about it, but to Qin Guang, it was dispensable. If you still don't behave, then I won't do it anymore. What can you do to me? As for China, the Chinese version of World School that Qin Guang had personally translated was finally printed and resold to the whole country. As a Chinese with a proper background, his book was first published in English before being translated into Chinese. Qin Guang had no choice but to admit that he had made a huge blunder and attracted quite a bit of criticism from Pinky. However, he was too lazy to explain to others. From the beginning, his target was the Oscars. Of course, it was the fastest way to get it abroad. Those who wanted to criticize him could find it. Even if he explained it to them, they would selectively ignore it. Those who didn't want to criticize him would understand without any explanation. Qin Guang just thought it was ridiculous. The Chinese version was only 10 days late. Did they have to go online and say that he had forgotten his roots? There were even such rumors on the internet, saying that he had even changed his nationality and became a foreigner. Qin Guang did not even want to listen to them. Are you stupid? The former director of the General Administration of Guangdong, the head of a violent organization, and a legitimate deputy minister. Even if I am willing to change my nationality, they should dare to accept it, right? It would be strange if the old men did not fight with me. In the next few days, Qin Guang ran around the United States to watch a few WWE and UFC matches and met those fighting stars who supported him. On the surface, it seemed that he was just returning the favor and going to support them personally. In fact, not many people knew that he had been thinking about what he should do to complete the feat of a physical statue of God. Participating in this kind of competition was mostly meaningless. It was useless even if he was invincible in the world. With his current ability, there was no one in this world who could make him go all out. Others would fall with just a finger. It was not difficult to be the best in the world, but it was difficult to be unprecedented. Let's not talk about foreign countries. Just in China, Qin Guang said that he was the first in history. If others said that he was capable, why don't you compete with Li Yuanba? You have great strength. The flowery monk Lu Zhishan uprooted willows. His strength was no less than yours, right? A certain general held an iron spear that weighed hundreds of kilograms and danced it like a wheel of wind and fire. If you are so capable, go and fight with others. Also, can you defeat Qiyu, the god of war, Xing Tian, the ancient god of war? What? You said that they were mythical figures and did not exist? Yes, we did not have clear evidence to prove their existence or whether they were as strong as the legend said. But you also could not find evidence to prove that they were fake. This was a paradox that made people feel hopeless. Qin Guang could only say, how can I compare my head to the ancient people who have turned to ashes in the half-life of the elements? At least he could find a lot of reference materials for acting, and there were authoritative works that could make a clear comparison. But when it came to fighting, there was really no way. The living could never defeat the dead. 3 days later, as more and more people successfully bought World's Pie, more and more people went into the cinema to watch Women Together with the Monograph. At the same time, more people downloaded the videos of Luo and Zhu, Thunderstorm, and his public lecture at the International Film Hall of Fame and watched them continuously. Those who acted in movies and made movies learned from him, and those who only liked to watch movies and comment on movies only watched superficially. Those who didn't understand anything could at least find the real reason why Women, which was played in 2D, could bring them a completely different experience. Ordinary movies pursued a comprehensive visual and auditory experience, but Women was different. World's Pie was different. They were both performing arts. Others acted in a play, and the audience also watched a play. But for Chen Guang, they watched life. As more and more people surrendered to him, Chen Guang almost set off the strongest water storm in history. The water storm, which was spread by word of mouth, was like the sea level rise caused by the melting of the Antarctic glaciers during global warming. Within 3 days, it completely swept the world. At the same time, after the audience all over the world had been waiting for more than half a month, the long-awaited global release in other continents finally came. This time, the English version and the original Chinese version, which were dubbed by Chen Guang, were released at the same time. What was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots? This was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots. How grand was it to break the first-day box office records on all continents at the same time? Ordinary words were not enough to describe the brilliance of this era. Previously, although everyone had recognized the artistic achievements of Women, they still had reservations about the box office. Artistic achievements and box office performance were never directly proportional. Before this, not many people thought that Women had any possibility of making history. The most optimistic estimate was that it would just break 2 billion. This was already the third highest box office in history, only behind Avatar and Titanic, and even slightly higher than Star Wars 7: The Force Awakens. But now that the movie was really released worldwide, it was unknown whether it was because of the sudden release of the impact of the accumulated box office in all continents, or because the movie was originally so suitable for all ages. In short, it was a complete explosion. It was even fiercer than the impact of Avatar. But Chen Guang didn't care about this at all. At this time, he was sitting cross-legged on the roof of the Flemington Hotel. Obviously, an unprecedented strong sense of worship was coming from all over the world, as if it had materialized. Chen Guang could even see the faces of people like Emma Watson and William Jones from these thoughts. He had already vaguely felt that the power of the Holy Grail that filled every corner of the earth was becoming more and more active. Even the white threads of the power of faith that had gradually sunk into the ground of Cloud City in his world in the cup were floating up again. In addition, all the 9 great statues that he had obtained so far were faintly trembling. The frequency of the trembling seemed to be completely in sync with his heartbeat. Even if the 9 great statues were in the world in the cup, the trembling seemed to be able to pass through the barrier of time and space, resonating with his physical body in the outside world. This caused his heartbeat to become stronger and stronger, and even his blood was gradually heating up. Without a doubt, all these strange phenomena meant that his acting statue of a god was about to appear. But he was also inexplicably surprised. He had obtained 9 statues before this, but none of them had caused such a huge commotion like today. He had been the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail for more than half a year, and his understanding of this Grail had deepened day by day. Until now, he thought that he already understood the heavenly Holy Grail very well. But now, a situation that was completely out of his expectations had suddenly appeared, causing him to wake up in an instant. After all this time, he still knew almost nothing about this broken Grail. The leaked power of the Holy Grail. What Lioli said was that because of his continuous triggering of the world of punishment, the real world and the real world were getting closer and closer, and even starting to slowly merge. The almost imperceptible but irresistible power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power between heaven and earth was becoming more and more intense. There was also the mutated wolf pack that he had previously encountered in Whitewater River County, or the phone thief who had suddenly died after being arrested by Wu Tong, or the special world in the cup in the laboratory used to study photocatalysis that was inexplicably triggered, and the birth of the new statue that had caused the power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power in the outside world to go berserk at the same time. Then there was the strange phenomenon of his heartbeat resonating with the statue. All of this seemed completely out of the ordinary. Regarding this, Chen Guang only wanted to say 5 words. Absolute dumbfounded. He could only ask Liuli. Lady Liuli. What the hell is this? Causing trouble. The long-lost voice of Liuli sounded in his mind. Don't panic. I'm relieved that you said so. Please show me the way, Lady Liuli. Liuli coughed lightly. There is a very popular saying on the internet. Please say it. Liuli said darkly, life is like being raped. Since you can't resist, then close your eyes and enjoy it. Chen Guang, who was sitting cross-legged, looked solemn, but his heart was like a shrew cursing in the street. Damn it, Liuli's rape theory was the same as the original, pray for your own good, and there is always a way out. To put it bluntly, it was irresponsible. She dragged him, the pitiful savior, into the water, and then she shirked her responsibilities at all kinds of critical moments. She knew how to pretend not to know and deliberately messed with him. Well, if she really didn't know, it seemed to be even worse. We can't do this, right? Let's not talk about my life and death. Just look at the mutated giant wolves in Whitewater River County last time. If they hit the ordinary people, how much damage would they cause? According to the current trend, God knows when they will appear again. You should be a little more responsible. Liuli sneered, that's strange. Isn't this all caused by you? Isn't it you who triggered the world of punishment? Isn't it you who made the real world and your real world get closer and closer? Chen Guang was not convinced. Bah. I didn't know it would be like this before. Liuli used her usual sharp tongue. Why? If you knew it back then, would you have chosen not to use the world of fate and not to save your mother's life? Or would you have obediently let the extremists control your plane and let you and your friends die in the sky? Are you so great? Chen Guang, if I knew it back then, I would really. Chen Guang was speechless. Chapter 1125. He found that not only was he no match for Liuli, but he was also no match for her in words. Even though he had mastered 4,987 languages and was proficient in millions of vulgarities in various languages that could make people doubt their lives, he was still no match for Liuli when it came to reasoning. Liuli gave him an extremely difficult choice. Was he going to sacrifice his mother, or drag the whole world down with him? Was he going to sacrifice himself and his woman, or drag the whole world down with him? Even if he had known the result and was given 10,000 chances to choose again, it seemed impossible for him to make such a heroic declaration. Especially the first time, if the choice was a life for a life, Chen Guang felt that he might really be willing to exchange his life for his mother's survival. Chen Guang argued feebly, but I didn't know anything after all. You could have told me earlier. Liuli sneered, but now you already know, and you once again crazily pursue the 10th statue for your own survival. You have accelerated the speed of the integration of the real world and your real world. I didn't know that either. All I could think about was the problem of the statue. All I could think about was the debt of 1.46 billion faith points that I had to bear. I never thought that the moment I got the statue, I would accelerate the integration of the two worlds. And it was because you didn't remind me. I remembered an old saying from your hometown again. I didn't kill the people, but the people died because of me. Chen Guang was infuriated by Liuli's words, but his imagination ran wild. You are a sinister villain. Now I suspect that you are not a god emperor at all. You are an invader from a certain plane, right? You are just using me. You keep tempting me. You asked me to open the barrier between the two worlds with my own hands so that the army of billions of gods and devils behind you could enter our universe and invade our plane. He almost convinced himself. Perhaps he had been dealing with too many movies recently, and he had seen a lot of movies, so there were many similar themes in the history of movies. The more Chen Guang thought about it, the more he felt that his seemingly absurd idea was quite possible. The two so-called gods, Liuli and Lu Ming, never had the slightest majesty and solemnity that belonged to a real god. Their behavior all along was clearly that of the unruly, willful, sinister and cunning demon princesses that were often written in fantasy novels. Chen Guang's memories of Lu Li and Lu Ming flashed across his mind. Except for a few times when Lu Li revealed the so-called true body of the Shen Huang, she was really like that most of the time. Unexpectedly, Lu Li and Lu Ming burst out laughing in the cup world. Lu Ming, fool. Liu Li said, I really think that you should go to the mental world next time and become the most mentally retarded person in the human world. The two deity emperors laughed mercilessly at Chen Guang. However, Chen Guang remained unmoved. He glared angrily and kept a straight face. Tell me. Is this real or not? He roared in his heart. Liu Li did not say anything. Lu Ming scoffed, but changed the topic. All right, now that things have come to this, Sister Lu Li is still soft-hearted. I'll admit it to you. Not bad. It's true. But we are not some ridiculous demon race. We are indeed the god race and also the real gods. Our purpose is to devour the core of your extremely complete universe. Your universe is very special and delicious. At that time, your universe will return to before the Big Bang and become the most delicious singularity that will be slowly eaten by us. Chen Guang fell silent again, and an unprecedented firm belief rose in his heart. If his guess just now was true, then he, the so-called savior, had always been like the puppet army, the guide party, and the traitor during the war of resistance. No, if I really attracted the gods and demons, then their real purpose must be the entire universe. Am I a traitor? Chen Guang raised his head blankly and looked at the starry sky in the sky. He couldn't help but think of Huaxia tens of thousands of kilometers away. The sky there should be clear. His parents were probably bragging to others that their son was about to become the first Huaxia Oscar winner in history, and his grandchildren in the dormitory should be forging his autographed photos. There were also Wen Wen, Jin Shiyue, Jiang Yage, Sun Xiaoxuan, Wu Tong, Lu Fei, Xian Qin, Wu Miaowan, Teacher Zhua, who was in Princeton, and Tang Ying, who would arrive in Los Angeles in 2 days. Many names and faces, from family to friends, from relatives to women, many people that he had interacted with in one way or another in his life, or had heard of and admired countless people. A crazy idea suddenly surged in his heart. This idea came extremely abruptly and without warning, but it was exceptionally fierce. This idea occupied his entire mind in an instant and became extremely firm. For family, friends, for Earth, for all of humanity, for the solar system, for the entire universe. I'll jump. All of this took a long time to describe, but from the time he started thinking about it to the time he took action, perhaps only 0.1 seconds had passed. It was even too late for Liu Li to control his body. With a loud bang, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the incomparably sturdy ceiling of the Flemington Hotel under his feet. Holding the cup in his hand, Chen Guang's entire body violently flew over the edge of the rooftop of the Flemington Hotel. That's right, he planned to commit suicide. He believed that in this situation, there was only one way to stop all of this, and that was to kill himself. Flying over the rooftop of the 19th floor of the Flemington Hotel, floating in the air, Chen Guang silently thought, really, I never dreamed that I could actually be so great. Forget it, it's better for me to die than for everyone else to die. I'm going to die sooner or later anyway. Rather than dragging the entire world to hell with me, I might as well go one step ahead. If everything that happened to me could be recorded in a book, I wonder if the future generations of humanity would laugh at my ignorance and ridiculousness, or praise my greatness and bravery. Death can be lighter than a goose feather or heavier than Mount Tai, but for me, my death is the weight of the entire universe. I can't even describe how great I am. This simple leap of faith of mine, what kind of majestic spirit does it carry? Just as Chen Guang was constantly hypnotizing and numbing himself in his heart, constantly finding millions and millions of sufficient reasons for this seemingly rash and impulsive leap of faith, this conversation appeared in his mind again. Dear Cry, you idiot. This fool really believed it. You don't even know the situation when you're joking. This was Liuli's hysterical roar. Chen Guang thought to himself, what's going on? Then his eyes widened. Ah! What? Dear Cry also panicked. I. You. This emperor is King convinced by you. You're really jumping off the building. Crazy. Completely crazy. Still floating in the air, with the cold wind blowing, Chen Guang became more and more dumbfounded. AM. Big. CK. Does this mean that Dear Cry is joking? Impossible. I don't believe it. Feeling the strong wind blowing against his face was almost deformed. He shouted like this, but not a single sound came out. Liuli quickly explained, do you think this is possible? If it's really like this, why did we go through so much trouble to help you? Also, don't you feel that it's strange at all? Sometimes your control over the heavenly Holy Grail far surpasses this emperor. You don't feel it at all? Just like when you wanted to get customized training, when you used the Heaven's Line Grail in batches to improve yourself, your sovereignty over the heavenly Holy Grail far surpasses mine and Dear Cry's by countless times. Dear Cry also explained at the side, that's right, my body, Sister Liuli's divine soul and the heavenly Holy Grail are all partially fused, but my control over this lousy heavenly Holy Grail is still surpassed by you, because the heavenly Holy Grail is you. Enough. Dear Cry, don't say any more. Liuli suddenly interrupted Dear Cry, and said, in short, Chen Guang, you have to believe me, I swear on my godhood, we are definitely not those strange things that you think. Also, the reason why it became like this, is indeed not the fault of this emperor and Dear Cry. You are indeed the most fundamental reason, and even the only reason. The inside story is extremely deep, with your current realm, even if I tell you clearly, you won't understand. Chen Guang was about a few meters away from the floor. He didn't have the time to carefully consider Liuli's words, nor did he have the time to think about whether he regretted it or not. He decisively landed on his face. Chapter 11:26. Before completely losing consciousness, the pitiful Lord Guang could only express that he regretted it a little. But it's no use, I've already sacrificed my life with the greatest courage in the universe. Wait. It seems like I can't die. I fell for nothing. Pia. Screech. With this sound, Chen Guang landed on the cement wall in the backyard of the Flemington Hotel. The scene was tragic, enough to scare a 7-foot-tall man to the point of urinating on the spot. To sum it up, it was an eyesore. Under the joint efforts of Liuli and Dear Cry, the chin-type meat paste was moved to the back of the bushes before anyone discovered it, conveniently concealing the smell. Fortunately, the hotel's watchdog was a dumb husky. The security guards brought the seemingly fierce but actually adorably dumb husky over for a stroll, but they found nothing. They only found a big pit on the ground, and then they turned around and left with a belly full of doubts. After a full 2 hours, under the frenzied infusion of divine power by the two god emperors, Chen Guang, who had the regenerative ability of the earth paste exploder, came back to life. That's right, of course he wouldn't die. Actually, without Liuli and Dear Cry's help, he wouldn't die either, just that the recovery time would be much longer. After all, he was the highest level elemental creature, the earth paste exploder. Saying that he had an immortal body was an understatement. The naked Chen Guang sat silently in the bushes, once again looking up at the moon in the sky. After thinking about it, there was only one word in his mind: what a scam. The scene changed, and he entered the world in the cup, then sat cross-legged on the floor of Cloud City, staring fiercely at Liuli and Dear Cry with a pair of dead fish eyes. You guys, that's enough, Liuli and Dear Cry smiled apologetically. Ha ha ha, I was just making a harmless joke, I didn't expect your reaction to be so intense. Chen Guang roared, nonsense. How can it not be intense? King believed it, I thought I was going to be a traitor. Do you think I had much time to think? Lioli can see through my heart. If King really wanted to stop you guys. Do you know how much determination I've put into this? Do you know how much pain I was in just now? I'm not joking with you. If that's the case, I can jump into the atomic furnace. I mean it. Chen Guang was still a little angry. Whether he was a villain or a great person, everyone had their own bottom line. If the world had to be destroyed because of him, if his death could save the whole world, Chen Guang felt that the reason he chose to sacrifice himself was 100 times better than those martyrs who would rather die than surrender and die for the revolutionary cause during the war. They died for the ideals of communism, but no matter what, they only represented a part of the people, and they could not even break through the scope of the earth. And I, Chen Guang, am doing this for all of humanity, for the entire universe, and of course, for the other life forms that may or may not exist in the billions and billions of universes. If he had more time to think, of course, he wouldn't have made such a crazy decision in a hurry. However, he knew that Lioli knew what he was thinking. It was a bit of a mouthful, but that was the truth. Therefore, as long as it involved the heavenly Holy Grail and himself and Lioli, he had to be so resolute. I know, but I really didn't mean it. Sorry, very sorry. Seeing that Chen Guang was still brooding over it, Lu Ming apologized in a slightly tired voice. Lioli also tried hard to stay awake. She couldn't even lift her eyelids. The lustrous feather dress that had just recovered with great difficulty seemed to be on the verge of breaking apart again. Sigh, I've really been fooled by you two living treasures. An idiot made a joke regardless of the occasion, and the other fool actually suspected that I was plotting something. I'm really suffering as a deity emperor. Besides, Chen Guang, save it. Even if Lu Ming and I really want to invade your universe, you can't stop us. Well, now you see, you can't die. You can jump into an atomic furnace and you can't die even if you fly into outer space. You can't die even if I put you into the center of the sun. You now look like a living physical creature, but in fact, your body and divine soul have become an incredible existence between materialization and energy, comparable to a deity emperor. If your body is really completely destroyed, you will at most become an immortal elemental creature ancestor. Besides, you really can't blame me for not telling you in advance that things will become like this. I have told you countless times that this is the first time the heavenly Holy Grail has been activated, and no one knows what will happen. Let alone me, even my father, the master god of chaos, doesn't know why this situation has happened. What I can do is to help you analyze what kind of situation this is after it has happened. As for what will happen next, I can't predict it either. Just as I have always said to you, when the boat comes to the bridgehead, there will be a way. Whether it is you, me, or Lu Ming, we can only take one step at a time, counter every move, counter every move, counter every soldier with a general, water with an earth weir. Chen Guang, admit it, the vernacular telepathy combination that shone brilliantly in the Chinese idiom conference some time ago, was it you and Lu Ming? Your idiom conference can't stop. Lu Ming, Lioli, about 10 minutes later, everyone finally calmed down completely, and the three restored the mutual trust relationship in the past. Then they began to talk about business. Lioli, today's situation is probably because the total number of your statues has finally reached 10. It could also be because the statue you have successfully cast this time is too perfect, or it could be because the integration of the real world and your real world has finally exceeded a certain limit. That's why it's like this. That's not right? Aren't my 7 idols gone? But you can still get faith value, can't you? And it only looks like it's gone on the surface, but you can still feel their vibration just now, can't you? Chen Guang asked. Well, it's like this. So in order to chase after the statue, I have inevitably further accelerated the integration of the real world and the real world? Lioli nodded first, then shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Maybe it will happen even if you don't do anything. It may also be that the two situations are coincidentally put together. You're not afraid that I will give up the next statue and take the initiative to die, so you're deliberately tricking me? As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. Chen Guang subconsciously began to doubt Liuli's motives again. Lu Ming, who was next to him, said helplessly, okay, I really give up. Sister Liuli has already sworn with her divinity, do you still not believe her? If it wasn't for Sister Liuli not letting me say it, I really want to tell you something. Even if something really happens to your broken cup, you can never blame it on me and Sister Liuli. Hearing this, Chen Guang examined Liuli, trying to use his own eyes to see through Liuli's heart. He knew that these two gods had been hiding something from him. Moreover, they didn't even try to hide it. They just showed it directly. I won't tell you, what are you going to do? Hit us? Forget it. All in all, I understand what you're trying to say. Whatever I do or don't do, I can't change the reality that the two worlds are gradually merging and the real world will be changed, right? Liuli nodded. Exactly. Also, there's no telling when it will happen. Maybe it will take a long time, or maybe it will happen in the next second. The seemingly subtle changes will reach a certain limit instantly. By then, Chen Guang interrupted Liuli. By then, existences like the mutated wolves that I encountered last time will appear everywhere in the world? Liuli shook her head. Not exactly. Chen Guang immediately took a long breath in relief. That's good. I was really worried about that. Liuli, no, it's much more serious than that. Chen Guang almost jumped to his feet. Why don't you make it clear? What do you mean by much more serious? I don't know, but I'm certain that the changes caused by the integration and overlap of two dimensions can't just be superficial. In your universe, it's still uncertain for other planets, but on Earth, the changes will certainly shake the foundation. What foundation? Everything. Everything? That's right. Everything that you see, hear, know, and even everything that you don't know. Everything that you can imagine, everything that you can't imagine. Including all aspects of time and space, big and small. Even a speck of dust that has been floating in the air since the Jurassic period will be affected. Chen Guang gasped. In other words, from our past, to our present, to our future, everything will be completely changed? Liuli grunted. We can't rule out this possibility, but there's one thing that won't change. What? You. Because you're the master of the Holy Grail. For you, no matter what kind of integration happens, no matter where you're born, even if the real world and your reality are completely integrated, there won't be any changes to you. Because you can travel between every world in the cup. Chen Guang didn't think this was good news. He had a vague feeling. The greatest pain in the world was standing in front of the person you once loved the most, but she didn't recognize you. In other words, it's possible that my family is no longer my family, or that they don't exist at all. After the world is changed, my ethical family, my parents, may become people that I don't know at all. But in their hearts, in their memories, I'm still their son. But I don't know them at all. Lu Mingguo's voice came from afar. Although I don't want to tell you, this may happen, but it may not necessarily happen. Chen Guang asked again, also, everyone that I used to know, may become strangers to me? Liuli nodded again, but she thought for a moment and said, just as I said before, if the real world and your reality merge and completely change your time and space, you must be the most stable point among all the planes. Then, just like how every pair of people in the world who know each other will have some kind of connection, let's call it fate. The threads of fate form a big net, binding everyone in the world to this net, or in other words, binding every planet in the universe to this net. The fate of countless tiny existences combine together to become the fate of a basic ion. Countless basic ions combine together, letting out two coughs. Chen Guang replied, you don't have to explain too much. What I understand is that everything in the world is connected, and every existence is an individual. But at the same time, they're also a part of the whole. Yes, that's right. Then, when the vibration of subversion comes and is about to overturn the entire plane, you, as the only stable point, the things that are personally related to you, or people, are likely to get some stable characteristics because of the connection with your fate. The closer their relationship with you is, the more stable they will be. Chen Guang suddenly understood. I understand what you mean. I'm equivalent to Noah's Ark in the Bible story when the world is coming to an end, right? The closer you are to me, the harder it is to be changed, right? You can understand it this way. With this, his heart felt at ease. Previously, he was most worried about his parents, relatives, and friends, as well as those female confidants that he couldn't let go of. This was equivalent to taking a tranquilizer. Also, this change may not be completed in an instant, it may be carried out unknowingly and subtly. Also, even if someone has a close relationship with you, it is normal to have some slight changes. For example, that female Dr. Tang Ying, she is very close to you, right? But maybe one day, it will be normal for her cup size to increase or decrease by one size. Chen Guang nodded helplessly. I understand. The most helpless thing in the world is knowing what will happen, but being unable to stop it. Chapter 11:27. Finally, the power of the Holy Grail outside became more and more violent. The god of acting was stirring, as if it would appear in the next moment, but it never happened. Chen Guang did not know that at this time, a piece of news that completely blew up the world suddenly appeared on the internet. The Oscar committee finally became manly and made a shocking decision. President of the American Film Association, chairman of the Oscar committee, Fred officially announces big news. For the first time in history, the Oscars will be awarded in advance. The founder of the world's performing arts, Chen Guang, wins 3 awards alone. The storm of public opinion for Chen Guang to be awarded the Oscar in advance became more and more intense, especially after the tens of millions of copies of World's Faction were fully released in North America. The box office of Women in the other 6 continents, excluding Antarctica, became even more intense, which in turn put a lot of pressure on President Fred. It was even to the extent that awarding the Oscar to Chen Guang in advance was truly a global political correctness. After an incomparably painful struggle and hesitation, President Fred and the others finally made a brave decision that night. This year's Academy Award for Best Actor, which meant that Chen Guang was fully deserving of it. But this was not the end. Women also won the Best Film of the Year in one fell swoop. Of course, it was also an early award, and the reason for awarding the award was extremely sufficient. Although the film was not perfect and had many flaws, as long as it was the first time that the world's performing arts had appeared on the big screen, it would be enough to make the film go down in history. Logically speaking, the Best Film Award was more of an honor for the film's director, but when it came to women, no one would think so. Even Big Beard Deng himself would not have such extravagant hopes. Everyone knew that this was for Chen Guang. But this was not the end. There was another award. As everyone knew, the Lifetime Achievement Award was not given every year. Only when a person who made a huge contribution to the film industry reached a special level and was recognized by everyone, would this award be added in a certain year. In recent years, due to various reasons such as the market environment, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given almost every year, and its value had greatly decreased. However, Chen Guang had broken an incredible record. He was the youngest person to win the Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award in the shortest time since he entered the industry. He was also the only person to win the Lifetime Achievement Award after only acting in one movie. If the value of the Lifetime Achievement Award had declined in the past, then today, this award had become even more glorious because of Chen Guang. Then, as the video of President Fred's public speech was released, Chen Guang was instantly rewarded with the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Lifetime Achievement. No one had expected the big shots of the Oscar committee to go to such extremes. They would either not do it, or they would do it all in one go. They decided to award 3 awards to Chen Guang in advance. They did not have to wait until the award ceremony to announce them to the public. What was even more outrageous was that no one in the world objected to it at all. Qin Guang took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His mind sank into the world in the cup again. He stood in the middle of Cloud City and looked up at one of the 3,000 empty platforms on the city wall. This platform was right next to the statue of the language master, which was right next to the sphere. An overwhelming amount of faith points flew in from all directions of the cup realm without any warning and landed on it. In the blink of an eye, a blurry shadow appeared. It was roughly the shape of a human. The facial features and outline of the human figure gradually became clearer, and the light became more and more intense. After a long time, when the light dissipated, a huge statue of 100 feet tall stood proudly on the platform. It was Qin Guang himself. The statue of the god of acting had finally appeared. Qin Guang flew up and stood under the statue. He looked up, but he did not know what to feel. It wasn't that Qin Guang was stunned by the statue that looked exactly like him, but he noticed that the statue's expression was very strange. It seemed to be expressionless, but at a glance, it seemed that the statue was sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, and sometimes proud. The dull face of the statue seemed to be filled with all the expressions of a human. Qin Guang thought to himself, as expected of the statue of the god of acting. The Holy Grail really was a roundworm in his stomach. Even the statue that it randomly captured was so exquisite. Oh right, I almost forgot, I can still change the appearance once. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. Make me more handsome. The statue's appearance changed slightly again. Every detail of its face was slightly modified. But if you looked closely, you would find that it had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and it was full of heroic spirit. After showing off for a while, Qin Guang sorted out his faith points production. The statue of the god of acting did not let him down. Its production was directly maxed out, reaching 533333. Of course, this was also due to the constant growth of Lu Ming's fruit trees, which allowed the production of all the statues to steadily increase. Up to now, among the 8 statues of the Holy Spirit, only the pile driver statue that could not be improved maintained its daily production of 38,000. The other 7 statues were constantly improving with the growth of Lu Ming, reaching this number of 53,333. At the same time, the statue of the language master's cup realm and the statue of the god of acting were 10 times the upper limit of the Holy Spirit statue, which was exactly 533333. Adding the additional faith points from the Sea of Time and the realm of True Martial, as well as the fanatics, Qin Guang's daily production of faith points was as high as 1.59 million per day. But unfortunately, the huge mortgage loan he owed was still as high as 1.43 billion. With the current production, it would take him 903 days to repay the loan. But there was only 1 year and 11 months left for him, exactly 700 days. To borrow a phrase often used on the Chinese national football team, there was not much time left for Qin Guang. He was still very desperate. He still had to quickly finish the 3rd statue of the god of one line, the strongest physical body. In fact, in a strict sense, it should be the strongest leg muscle group. The realm of true martial that cast his strongest martial arts was not the one-line sky, but the 4th level, the blue sky. Currently, the only thing that could be used to obtain the statue of God was the one-line sky training related to the leg muscles during the accelerated physical body formation. Apart from the special training that was done in batches, he had done it before. Of course, the easiest way was to get it all at once and achieve all the strongest physical bodies, so that it could be done once and for all. With a complicated mood, Qin Guang retreated from the cup realm. Seeing that he was clean from head to toe, he had to pick up the cup and sneak back to the room like a thief. After changing into pajamas, Qin Guang lay on the bed and thought for a while. He didn't have to worry about the photocatalyst anymore. He could just leave it to Teacher Zhua. He didn't even have to worry about the application for the Scientific and Technological Progress Award at Tangshan Industrial Factory. He had sold a big favor to the Chinese Academy of Sciences. The final decision on the award was in the hands of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. As long as the finished product was taken out and put into practice at Tangshan Industrial Factory, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would completely turn over. There was nothing for him to do here. When Sister Tang Ying arrived in Los Angeles, he would go back to China with her. The next day, Chen Guang held his last press conference in America. At this press conference, he received the 3 trophies that had been made in advance from President Fred. He expressed his gratitude and promised to attend the final award ceremony in March. In the afternoon, he went straight to the airport, ready to meet Tang Ying there, and then fly straight back to China. After waiting in the airport for a long time, Chen Guang saw Tang Ying and Tang Xiaokai walking side by side. "Yo, Sister Tang Ying, Brother Xiaokai. Why are you here?" Chen Guang greeted the two with a smile. Although Tang Xiaokai was actually a few years older than him, they were now familiar with each other. Chen Guang didn't care so much. Tang Xiaokai looked at Chen Guang and Tang Ying, who stood side by side. "I'm my sister's protector. I'm here to keep an eye on you, Brother Guang." Tang Ying stepped on Tang Xiaokai's foot. "Shut up." Tang Xiaokai still refused to let it go. "Sister, don't quibble. I've seen through your little tricks long ago. Have you forgotten? I've been calling Chen Guang brother-in-law for a long time." Chen Guang was secretly pleased at being called brother-in-law, but when he saw Tang Ying blushing, he couldn't admit it now. "Don't talk nonsense. You must have something to tell me today." Tang Xiaokai was a busy man. He wouldn't come to a temple without a reason. He didn't have anything to do today, but he came. "I knew I couldn't hide it from you." Tang Xiaokai shrugged. "I do have something to ask of you." "All right, you two take your time. I still have to change my boarding pass." Dr. Tang was not like Chen Guang, who had the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal. He could pick his seat no matter where he went. He had to do all the registration and ticket changes himself. While Tang Ying went to change her boarding pass, Chen Guang and Tang Xiaokai had a simple chat. It turned out that Tang Xiaokai had his eyes on Chen Guang's photocatalyst. They were all on the same side, and Chen Guang was easy to talk to. After some communication, Chen Guang accepted Tang Xiaokai's suggestion. Morning Light Group, which was independent of Tianguang Group, was officially launched. It temporarily included 2 major sectors. First, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would be renamed to Morning Light Environmental Protection. The main business would remain the same, and the operation management and investment of the sewage treatment plant would be the direction of development. Second, the photocatalyst laboratory currently being built by Zhuo Jingxi would be officially named Morning Light Laboratory. Its main business would be the research and development of photocatalysts. Looking at Tang Ying, who was busy changing her boarding pass, Chen Guang started to ponder in his heart. The biological research facility that Tang Ying established with the Wujing University and Moreland's Institute of Medicine was mainly based on his genes. So it wouldn't be appropriate for him to ignore it. Why don't I fork out a portion of the money and become a major shareholder? If it was just Sister Tang Ying, it would be fine. But if she wanted to use my genes as a sample, the school and Moreland's medical college would benefit for nothing. As for Tang Xiaokai's request, it was not complicated. He would not directly own shares in Morning Light Environmental Protection. Instead, he would represent the Tang Jia Foundation and form a separate company. Its main business scope was to promote the technology and results produced by Morning Light Laboratory to the world. It was essentially a sales company. This way, Zhuo Jingxi could focus more on research and not worry about other things. After all, the products needed to be sold around the world through other people's hands. Although Chen Guang's technology had a monopoly advantage, the market management could not be ignored. As for Tang Xiaokai's marketing ability and character, Chen Guang trusted him. Just like that, the two of them only spent 20 minutes discussing this important matter. On the other side, Tang Ying had already changed her ticket and was walking over. She was a little unhappy. "I'm so angry. I originally booked a first-class seat, but it was inexplicably gone. I can't even change to business class, so I can only sit in economy class. Chen Guang comforted her. It's okay, it's okay. I'll also change to economy class and sit next to you. First class can't prolong my life. Tang Ying pouted. That's true, but Meizhong Airlines gave me economy class without my consent. They didn't even inform me in advance. This is not right. Chapter 1128. Chen Guang was also a little unhappy. Previously, the two of them had agreed to return to China together. Tang Ying had booked a seat first, and he had called the Civil Aviation Administration to book a seat next to Tang Ying. Originally, the two of them had agreed to sit side by side in the first-class cabin. With such a long flight, they might even be able to take the opportunity to do it like before. They might even be able to do something else. But now, it was all over. Tang Ying had been transferred to economy class. Meizhong Airlines was clearly not giving him any face. Alright, he and Tang Ying had booked their tickets separately, so Meizhong Airlines might not be aware of their relationship. Since Chen Guang had taken quite a bit of advantage from the civil aviation industry, he felt that it wasn't a crime to be ignorant. Hence, there's no need for him to make a fuss over such a small matter, and he decided to let people off the hook whenever possible. In the past, he had always cut the queue and snatched other people's seats without paying. God knows how many people had been forced to descend because of his sudden whim. As the saying goes, those who do evil will bring about their own destruction. He had done too many bad things and could not avoid retribution. Although the retribution for the descent did not fall on his head, it was the same thing for Tang Ying. I have to help the airline company appease the angry passengers. With that thought in mind, his butt was crooked. I'm going to call their boss later. Calm down. Sister Tang Ying, calm down first. As he spoke, he patted Tang Ying's shoulder. Tang Ying glared at him. Why are you still speaking up for the airline company? Chuckling, Chen Guang replied, how can you put it that way? I'm not speaking up for them. In fact, I used to cause people to descend often. Let's be more understanding. The seats in economy class are a little narrow, and we can sit close together. It's fine. Forget it. I'm not that spoiled. I've even bought a special ticket that Eastern Airlines doesn't have. I'm just a little unhappy that they surrendered without saying a word. Tang Ying rolled her eyes and waved her hand. That's right. They are of low standards. I will really get the Civil Aviation Association to reprimand Meizhong Airlines staff, okay? Chen Guang added. At this time, Tang Xiaokai, who was next to her, also helped to absolve her. That's right. I also know the global vice president of American Airlines. Sis, I'll help you redress this injustice. But don't worry about it today. You don't like to be special. Their airlines have always done things like this. Pan Am is slightly better, but American Airlines service attitude in this area is indeed problematic. Alright. Look at the two of you. You make it sound like I'm the one who's unruly and willful. The three of them chatted for a while. Tang Xiaokai had other things to do in Los Angeles, so he left first. There was still some time before takeoff, so Chen Guang and Tang Ying found a cafe in the airport lobby and sat down. After that, he called the Civil Aviation Association specialist, who specialized in serving the highest-level VIP customers, to voluntarily downgrade from first class to economy class. Recipients of the Hero Medal had a higher priority than VIP customers. As soon as Chen Guang made the call, he naturally received the highest level of service. He enjoyed the same or even better treatment as top billionaires like Buffett, Gates, and Zuckerberg when they took private flights on commercial airliners. There was an extremely high level of confidentiality, even higher than that of ordinary U.S. government officials. Only the specialist, who personally adjusted the seat for him, knew what was going on, who wanted to change the seat, and how it was done. In addition, because Chen Guang's own reputation was too resounding recently, he did not want to cause too much of a stir when he returned to China. Therefore, when he contacted the specialist, he took the initiative to further increase the level of confidentiality. As for American Airlines, the highest-level security certification department knew the specific details. However, due to the confidentiality agreement, they would not immediately inform the Los Angeles airport and the ordinary staff on Chen Guang's flight. They did not need to know why, nor did they need to know who wanted to change the seat. They only needed to execute and implement it. The highest responsibility of the entire aviation safety system was the Safety Committee. With the Safety Committee's stamp of approval, the passenger's identity was already foolproof. When the passenger's identity was verified for the last time before departure, they could see the name Chen Guang, but before that, they were not qualified to check it in advance. Downgrading was difficult, and it was easy to offend people. However, allowing a lone passenger to be upgraded from economy class to first class for free was simply a matter of a phone call. What's more, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong with the seat, Chen Guang even took the initiative to provide the passenger with $2,000 in cash as compensation. After waiting for about an hour, the two finally got on the plane. Tang Ying stuffed her carry-on bag under her feet and complained unhappily, "I should have put my bag in the suitcase. Economy class is too narrow." Chen Guang wasn't any better than her. He also had a bag with him, which he used to store his laptop and the omnipotent Holy Grail. "Look at you, Sister Tang Ying. One look and I can tell that you've never lived a poor life. Don't even mention economy class. A year ago, when I was as poor as a doornail, I went to another city to do part-time work. I couldn't afford a berth, and I couldn't even get a seat ticket. All I could buy was a standing ticket and squat in the green train aisle for a whole night. What's this today?" Tang Ying pinched Chen Guang's waist in annoyance. "You're the only one who has a lot of life experience, okay? Hee, I don't deserve it." Chen Guang chuckled, "Sorry for not recognizing you. Sister Tang Ying, you're also very good. I used to think that the best doctors were in their 70s or 80s, but after meeting you, I realized that doctors in their 20s can also be so outstanding." Tang Ying was not moved by his flattery at all. "You have the cheek to say such things? I won't talk about your other things. I won't talk about you, the newly minted Oscar winner. Just the photo catalyst that you created a while ago was able to attract the attention of laboratories like Prince, Alamo, and Cambridge. Even if there were 10 of me, I wouldn't be able to match your achievements. I think you're mocking me." Chen Guang was embarrassed by her praise. Shoo, lower your voice. Don't let anyone recognize me." As he said that, he desperately pulled the brim of his hat down to cover his face, and then he pretended to be modest. "Don't praise me anymore. If you continue to brag, I'll be in heaven." "Brag?" Tang Ying turned around and looked at him with a playful look. "You're not serious, kid." Chen Guang felt wronged. "I'm very serious, okay? I know you're still thinking about the past. You're not serious when you get on the plane. You're still bragging? Going to heaven? You're still calling yourself serious? Have you no shame? Brag." As she said that, she deliberately pouted her lips and made a very meaningful gesture. Chen Guang, Sister Tang Ying's sudden burst of unorthodox ideas was a little sharp. Okay, I'll stop joking with you. If it wasn't for the fact that we're in economy class and there are people next to us, I really didn't intend to let you off. I'm a professional medical researcher, and I'm actually left in the dust by a half-baked person like you in terms of knowledge. I really can't accept this. Don't worry, wait for me to collect more samples from you and decipher your genetic code. In the future, all of humanity will remember my contribution. Who knows, maybe you're hiding the secret to the next stage of human evolution. If I achieve my goal, I can be even greater than Darwin." Tang Ying, who was sitting near the aisle, whispered into Chen Guang's ear on her right. Chen Guang had a very unique feeling. She was clearly talking about a very great and noble goal, but his heart was in turmoil, as if it was being scratched by a cat's paw. "Okay, then I, as a lab rat, will have to risk my life to accompany you. Chen Guang didn't want to be someone else's lab rat, but if it was Tang Ying, then he didn't mind. Everyone was so familiar with each other, they met when they were down, their relationship was extraordinary, and Tang Ying's sample collection process was so, oh yeah, one more thing. Sister Tang Ying, how much is the initial investment for your research institute? Will Gokyo University and Moorlands each pay half? Chen Guang asked as they whispered to each other. Tang Ying stomped her feet in anger. Stop it, I'm angry when you mention it. My saliva is almost dry. No matter what I say, I made it very clear that if you want to build a biomedical laboratory of a sufficient level, just the purchase of the most basic equipment and instruments will cost at least $50 million. This does not include the other construction costs of purchasing land in the 5 capitals and the cost of manpower. Chen Guang scratched his head. It's just studying my genes, is there a need for such a big deal? Tang Ying, in genomics, there's not much difference between studying a person and studying a pig. I think you're scolding me. You can think whatever you want. If it's just a human genomics experiment, the workload won't be too big, but you're too different from ordinary people. I think it's very likely that more than 10% of your genes will have to be remeasured. That's not a big workload, right? A person has 3 billion base pairs. That's not a big workload? Okay, it's a lot. That's why I'm very angry. My alma mater, Moorlands and Gokyo University, are too stingy. It's not a problem for them to provide manpower, but when it comes to money, they're all misers. They can't even give me $20 million. Then why don't you provide your own money? Tang Ying shrugged. Do you think I didn't ask Xiao Kai and my dad? They don't agree. They all know that genomics is actually doing public welfare for humanity. It's purely a waste of money. They look like they care more about money than their lives. They're all businessmen. How can you talk about your father and brother like that? Aren't they very generous to me? That's because investing in you has a greater profit, okay? Forget it, anyway, let's leave it at that for now. $20 million. I'll reluctantly set up the framework. I'll take it one step at a time. However, Chen Guang smiled meaningfully. Sister Tang Ying, in my humble opinion, you've forgotten a very important thing. What? The person sitting next to you is probably the #1 nouveau riche of this year. He's lacking in everything now, but he's not lacking in money. Tang Ying's eyes gradually lit up. Hey, why didn't I think of that earlier? Chen Guang continued to chuckle. $50 million? What is this? It's not that I'm bragging, but I can even take out $500 million now. He really wasn't joking. Although the cost of coming to America was not small, the income was even higher. The box office of the movie, the development of Romeo and Juliet, and the crazily selling World's Pie were all living old hens that could lay golden eggs. While the two were chatting happily, they were puzzled as to why the plane was still not taking off. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the aisle. Tang Ying straightened her head and craned her neck to look behind her. What's going on? Standing in the aisle were 2 burly male airport staff. The 2 of them walked along the rows of seats and raised their heads to meet Tang Ying's gaze. Then, the 2 men's eyes lit up. They stopped counting and walked over with large strides. One of the burly black men said loudly in a low, muffled voice, "This Chinese lady, oh, and this Chinese man next to you, please leave the plane." The white man next to him added, "Sorry, our tickets are oversold." Tang Ying was stunned. She had been flying for so many years and had encountered situations where she couldn't board a plane because of oversold tickets. But that had never happened to her before. Besides, if it was really oversold, she wouldn't even be able to get a boarding pass. She had never heard of an oversold ticket when the person was already on the plane. Bullsh *T. Chapter 1129. It was not until the two men walked along the aisle and stood in front of Tang Ying and stared down at her from above that Tang Ying was convinced that such a strange thing had really happened to her. But she still could not accept it. She raised her head and pointed at her face. Are you talking about me? Oversold? You want us to get off the plane? Tang Ying turned to look at Chen Guang beside her. She felt an indescribable pain in her balls. Did he forget about being demoted from first class to economy class? In any case, he could fly back to China. At most, he would complain about American Airlines' rudeness and contempt for its customers in his circle of friends when he got back. But now, even economy class was gone. She could only say that she had run into trouble. She had to attend a meeting at the city hospital tomorrow morning and hand over the last of her work. In the afternoon, she had to attend a meeting with the leaders of Gokyo University School of Medicine, Dachuan's Department of Science and Technology, China's Ministry of Science and Technology, and the leaders of the Ministry of Education would all attend the meeting to discuss the specific details of investing in the establishment of a national biomedical laboratory. If she could not get on the plane this afternoon, then tomorrow's meeting would be over. This pigeon had been placed too far, and the joke had been made too big. Chen Guang was about to get up when Tang Ying pressed his shoulder down. Don't say anything. I want to see what American Airlines is planning to do today. Tang Ying did not want Chen Guang to step in. The reason was simple. She was already furious when she was demoted. Chen Guang had comforted her and forced her to tolerate it. Now that American Airlines was here to cause trouble again, she could not tolerate it. Tang Ying felt that with Chen Guang's current fame and reputation, especially after knowing his status in the civil aviation industry, if Chen Guang showed his face, these guys who had been disgusting her would immediately bow and apologize. When that time came, one would not hit a smiling face. It would not be good to scold them. In addition, the furious Tang Ying was also curious as to what kind of interesting explanation the people from Meizhong Airlines could give to get her to descend and then kick her off the plane within a day. The two sturdy staff members looked curiously at Chen Guang, who was sitting next to them with a cap covering his face. According to the information, these two passengers did not book their seats at the same time. It seemed like they knew each other. Forget it, that's not important. A special ticket and a compensation ticket for lowering the cabin. They're not important people, so it doesn't matter whether I know them or not. Tang Ying stood up abruptly. You have to give me an explanation. I originally bought a first-class ticket, but you guys downgraded it to economy class. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. But as far as I know, you can't even get a boarding pass with an oversold ticket. This is not oversold at all. Faced with Tang Ying's rage, the Caucasian worker's expression didn't change. Miss from China, please calm down and cooperate with us. This was indeed overselling tickets. Please leave the plane immediately. Your emotions are out of control, and we can consider you as a threat to aviation safety. If necessary, we will take measures to force you off the plane. Impossible. I don't accept your reason. Tang Ying rebutted him right away. I don't even accept your reason for overselling tickets, and you want me to get off the plane? What about my meeting tomorrow? How am I going to explain myself? Seeing this, another black staff member pretended to take out a book from the side and flipped through the information on it. Madam Tang, on behalf of American Airlines, I am officially notifying you to depart from flight MZ878 immediately. We are deeply sorry for the trouble our company has caused you by overselling tickets. However, please cooperate with us. Also, the man next to you, in short, please leave the plane immediately. After that, he closed the book again, representing American Airlines to issue an official notice to Chen Guang and Tang Ying. However, there was one thing that was strange. The information in his hand did not show Chen Guang's name. He thought it was a mistake on the part of his colleague, but it didn't matter. How could they have known that Chen Guang's so-called special ticket was not a special price, but a free one? It was just that when Chen Guang took the initiative to descend, for the sake of confidentiality, the safety committee had set it as a special ticket for him. Of course, Tang Ying couldn't agree to it. Impossible. You, Mei Zhonghang, have gone too far. Get your manager here. Get your person in charge here. There are so many passengers on the plane, why must it be us? The white worker took a step forward. Miss Tang, you'd better control yourself on the plane. We can compensate each of you with $400. That's not a small amount for you Chinese. At this time, someone interrupted, stop compensating. I only compensated you like this once last year. $400? Pfft. It's 8 $50 coupons, and you can only use one each time you buy a ticket. Plus, it expires after a year. What's $400? With Tang Ying's net worth, she wouldn't even bat an eye if $4,000 was placed in front of her, let alone 8 ridiculous coupons. Impossible, I won't accept your compensation. Whoever wants it can go. We're not getting off the plane anyway. Tang Ying waved her hand and firmly refused. The faces of the 2 staff members gradually darkened. The white man clenched his fists tightly. Tang Ying wasn't afraid at all. Chen Guang was right behind her. Tang Ying knew how capable this kid was. She was sure that if this white man dared to throw a punch, he would be the one flying. The black worker pulled his colleague back a little. Miss Tang, I'll remind you for the last time. If you don't cooperate with us, you will be listed as an unwelcome guest by American Airlines. In addition, we will also submit your name to the Aviation Association. Also, as a Chinese national, you will be restricted from entering the country. Do you understand what I mean? I'm afraid you won't be able to come to America in the future. The white worker also suppressed his anger. That's right. Also, there are indeed many passengers in the cabin. We're very sorry about the overbooking, but the selection of passengers will be randomly selected by our system. Everyone can be selected. This is very fair for all passengers. You see, we need a total of 4 passengers to get off the plane. Apart from the 2 of you, there are 2 more passengers. At this time, the other passengers on the plane seemed to be a little impatient. They all began to chime in one after another. That's right. The airline company won't mess around. Hurry up and get off the plane. Don't waste everyone's time. It's all your own bad luck. You guys were selected. What else is there to say? If I was the one who was selected, we would have left the plane on our own. This is a plane, not a car at home. It's every passenger's duty to abide by the airline's rules. Most of the people who were making sarcastic remarks were seemingly warm-hearted, but in fact, they were very selfish international friends. There were also some Chinese people on the plane, but they didn't say much. Seeing their compatriots in trouble, they were also quite unhappy. There are 2 more people. Randomly selected? Tang Ying frowned. She didn't believe the explanation of the 2 workers at all. She and Chen Guang booked their tickets separately. Moreover, Chen Guang had just descended from the cabin. In the end, they were picked out together. If it was purely random, it would be a small event with a probability of 1% multiplied by 1%. One could win 5 million in the lottery. The white worker nodded coldly. Of course it's random. It's very fair. After that, he stretched his neck and shouted, Mr. Tao in seat D of the 9th row, Ms. Luo in seat E, please cooperate. Due to overbooking, you also need to leave the plane. Then he turned to look at Tang Ying. Miss Tang, as you can see, there are a total of 4 passengers. They have been selected fairly by our American Airlines system. Now, I'm issuing a final ultimatum. You must leave flight MZ878 immediately. Otherwise, we will take forced relocation measures. Your immature behavior is very troubling to us. Tang Ying almost laughed out loud. She was stunned. There were more than 200 passengers in the cabin, and less than a fifth of them were Asian. Was there something wrong with the machine? Just from the names, it was obvious that the other two unlucky people were also Chinese. All four of them were randomly selected. This guy was actually bragging about how fair and open their system was without batting an eyelid. Chen Guang, who was sitting next to her, was also stunned. He had always thought that the thickness of his skin could be ranked in the top 10 in the world. Now, he realized how naive he was. There was always someone better than him out there. One could not underestimate the heroes of the world. When it came to shamelessness, international friends were the strongest in this aspect. This is impossible. I want to contact my lawyer. Don't try to fool me with your overbooking and random system. Dream on. On the other side, the black staff was approaching the other two, overbooked, passengers, but Tang Ying slumped down. The white worker looked down at Tang Ying coldly. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he sneered and turned his head to walk further inside. On the other side, the two passengers who were also overbooked started arguing. Obviously, only white and black people would believe in the so-called fairness of the American airline system. No one was willing to be refused. It seems that our work today is not going well. Both groups of people refused to get off the plane. The two workers could not help but be particularly angry. I'll give you 5 more minutes to think about it. After that, you will be relocated. Whether you accept it or not, Pierce, let's go. The white man waved his hand. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Now you know what they're trying to do, right? Chen Guang quietly adjusted his hat. If you had asked me to step in earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Tang Ying was still angry. It's fine. It's the same even if you step in now. Chen Guang shook his head. I just looked it up online and found something very interesting. What is it? Chinese people have been overbooked for many years. You know what I mean. Chen Guang lowered his hat and grinned. If I didn't know about it, it would have been fine. But since I've seen it, I feel that since I've become quite famous in America recently, I might as well make a bigger deal out of it. Tang Ying asked, you want to do something for the Chinese people? Chen Guang shrugged. I'm not that great. It's just one thing. How much can I do? It's nothing more than to make them suffer a little, lest they think that yellow people are easy to bully. They've pissed us off and we don't like them either. Let's teach them a lesson. As he spoke, Chen Guang took out a pair of sunglasses and a mask from his bag and put them on his face. Things might get out of hand later. You don't have to step in. I'll do it. Chen Guang did not intend to make a big deal out of it. He thought that he could settle the whole thing with a phone call. Regardless of whether American Airlines was really overbooked or whether they really had to disembark the plane, if Chen Guang called the International Civil Aviation Association, there was no way they could not even get a seat. Even if someone really had to disembark the plane, it would not be him and Tang Ying. However, it happened right in front of him. The so-called fair and impartial random selection turned out to be people with the same skin color as him. He could not tolerate that. Chen Guang thought about the hardships he had faced since he came to America. Just because he was from China and was Chinese, how much resistance did he have to face from the start? If it were not for his nationality, if it were not for the fact that he was from China, how could the process of getting an Oscar be so difficult? Perhaps, he would have been recognized by the world long ago if he had not even used half of what he had done. Although the compensation offered by President Fred and the others was impressive, it was still Chen Guang's ability that had thoroughly convinced them. Chen Guang's performance was simply too perfect, to the point of being impeccable. However, before that, their resistance and rejection had made Chen Guang's life very difficult. If Chen Guang's abilities were just a little bit weaker, if he showed even the slightest flaw to others, it was very likely that his Oscar would go down the drain. At the end of the day, it was still because the Huaxia people lacked the right to speak in America, or even in the world. They were not valued and trusted. Even other colored people might not be able to compare. Talking about today's oversale, it was even more obvious. American Airlines was clearly targeting Asians, especially the Huaxia people. Especially now, there were still cold remarks coming from all directions. Most of them were saying that the Huaxia people did not follow the rules, were barbaric, and were wasting everyone's time. Chen Guang only sneered in his heart. Whatever you say, don't even think about flying today. Sigh, since you want to do something big, then we probably can't fly today, right? Too bad my meeting tomorrow, sigh. Chen Guang comforted him, it's okay, we can fly today. I promise you'll be able to step on our country's soil before 9 tomorrow morning, okay? That's not possible, right? Chen Guang shrugged. American Airlines isn't the only company that flies to Wujing. We'll pay for a jet from another company, it'll be the same. Chen Guang. Tanging number 1. Let's stop flattering each other. Yo, you're back again, and you even got help. As Tanging spoke, he looked up and saw a large group of people walking in from the aisle. In addition to the 2 guys just now, there were several uniformed people with guns. The staff of American Airlines directly called the airport police. It seemed that they were really going to take the so-called forced relocation measures. Passengers, please exercise restraint and do not record. Now, we will begin to take coercive measures against illegal passengers who do not cooperate. The Caucasian staff was more confident because he had someone behind him. He took the lead and spoke loudly. After he finished speaking, he picked up the walkie-talkie and said, Mr. Schultz, I'm starting here. Good, you've done a great job. We should teach these uncooperative, immature, and irrational passengers a lesson. Schultz, the general manager of American Airlines, who was in charge of Los Angeles airport affairs, said so. This young second-generation heir had recently taken over American Airlines business in Los Angeles under the arrangement of his father, who was a senior executive of American Airlines. He was planning to do something to build prestige among the staff, and he felt that this was a good opportunity. Several tall and strong police officers approached quickly, and many passengers who were watching the fun raised their phones. Not many people were so obedient as to stop recording just like that. Chen Guang finally stood up and moved away from Tanging to stand in the aisle. He adjusted his sunglasses and adjusted his mask. I sincerely hope that after today, you will remember something. Chapter 1130. The Caucasian officer felt that something was wrong. The Chinese woman, who seemed to be very difficult to deal with just now, was now sitting quietly in her chair. But the man in the cap, who had been silently pretending to be dead, suddenly stood up. What was even more strange was that the man was wearing sunglasses and a mask, as if he couldn't see the light of day and was acting sneakily. It's ridiculous. Pretending to be a star, as if he's afraid of being recognized. Where do you think you are? Maybe you're really a big shot in China, or maybe you're really famous, but this is the United States. No one will give you any face. The man didn't think that Chen Guang was a dangerous person. Although he still couldn't see Chen Guang's name, the passenger's information backup had been stamped by the National Security Committee. However, the airport's police officers didn't share the same thoughts. After all, Chen Guang didn't even dare to show his face to the police on the plane. In addition to the recent tense international situation, they were on full alert when they saw Chen Guang. Tanging didn't say anything else, but looked at Chen Guang's profile with great interest. She wanted to know how Chen Guang was going to make a big deal out of this. Chen Guang didn't have any particularly clever ideas. He just relied on the cap, sunglasses, and mask, and used the simplest and most violent way of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Seeing them getting closer, Chen Guang didn't rush to make a move. He liked to be polite before resorting to force, so he had a good reason to do so. If you keep control, I'll be easy to talk to. If you pretend, I'll be better at it. The Caucasian officer was walking forward, but was suddenly pulled back by the airport police officer behind him. What's the matter? Officer Jack. The Caucasian officer turned around and asked. Nelson, Are you sure this Chinese man's name is unknown on the passenger's information? Nelson nodded. I'm sure. I just confirmed it with Mr. Schultz. Officer Jack's eyebrows gradually furrowed. This is very strange. Now, I suspect that they may be terrorists. Mr. Schultz is the person in charge of your company in Los Angeles. Unless he's a special agent or official from the Department of Homeland Security, he won't be able to find his name before the flight, but this guy is Chinese. Nielsen's eyes lit up. He was indeed a smart police officer specially sent by Mr. Schultz to cooperate with him. If Nielsen still treated the man as an ordinary passenger, he would not be able to use some more extreme means. But if he labeled the man as a terrorist, he would suffer a lot. That's right, Officer Jack. When we were talking to them just now, this man behaved very strangely from beginning to end. He had been lowering the brim of his hat, as if he was afraid of being recognized by us. He was very suspicious. Also, his ticket information shows that it's a special fare ticket. Agents and officials won't buy a special fare ticket. They're all in first class. Pierce, the black man beside him, decisively dealt the finishing blow. Officer Jack nodded. All right, I know what to do. But later, don't show any obvious abnormalities. We're professionals, and we'll handle it. Look at the back of his hand. The blood vessels are bulging as if they're going to explode. Although he doesn't look strong, in my experience, people with this kind of physique have amazing explosive power. It's impossible to have this kind of physique without professional training. Jack was indeed a very professional and keen police officer. Ordinary people really couldn't see the threat of Qin Guang. The few of them were whispering from afar, thinking that no one could hear them. However, they never expected that Qin Guang had pricked up his ears and could hear every single word of theirs. It seemed that not only the International Friends of American Airlines were not very kind, but the Los Angeles police seemed to be even more crazy. He hadn't done anything yet, but they had already put a big hat on him. After the discussion, these people continued to come here until they stood in front of Qin Guang. With his keen senses, Qin Guang noticed that the airport's police officers must be communicating with each other through some hand signals. They seemed to be standing casually, but they were positioned at an ingenious angle, hiding the guns on their waists on the other side of their bodies. The atmosphere on the scene seemed calm, but in fact, undercurrents were surging. Qin Guang's eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed that these people weren't just simply putting a hat on him. They really thought that he was a terrorist. Was that necessary? You were using the excuse of overbooking, but in fact, you were violating the rules to kick innocent passengers off the plane. You were deliberately targeting the Chinese and discriminating against me and my countrymen, but you pretended to say that it was a fair and random draw. Now, I didn't even say a word, and you put a big hat on me. Do you really want to go against the law? Get off the plane, sir. And Ms. Tang next to you, this is really the last time I'm warning you. You can still book your tickets for tomorrow. This is just a trivial matter. You don't have to pay a huge price for it. Nelson, who was standing behind Officer Jack, tilted his head and said loudly. Letting out a cough, Qin Guang replied through his mask, "This is the first time I'm replying to you, and it will also be the last time. We won't accept your explanation of overbooking and random selection, and I'm no longer interested in taking your plane. However, this matter won't end so easily." You think it's a trivial matter? You're telling me that it's a trivial matter to randomly select 4 Chinese people to kick off passengers who have already boarded the plane? Then what else is a trivial matter for the aviation industry? What? Are you threatening us? Can you say it again? Officer Jack quietly put his hand behind his back and put his finger on his gun. He thought silently, is it a serious matter for the aviation industry? Apart from the air crash, it's probably a hijacking. Officer Jack's first impression of Qin Guang was the strongest. Now he inevitably extended the serious matter, in Qin Guang's words, to the hijacking of the plane. He was also shocked. He had never seen such an unscrupulous and crazy extremist. Not only was he not afraid in front of the police, but he even took the initiative to threaten them. Officer Jack felt that this person must be an extremist whose faith was beyond a certain level. He was the backbone of the organization and extremely dangerous. As for Chen Guang, the situation in front of him reminded him of a joke he often encountered when he was in countless fights since he was a child. Whenever someone said to someone, "If you have the guts, say it again," the other person would definitely say it again. The other person would definitely say something, and what was originally a trifling matter would immediately develop into a fistfight. The one who lost in a one-on-one fight would definitely call for help, and the other side wouldn't just admit defeat. That was how countless big and small group fights in the county came about. It was very likely that the earliest reason was that two kids accidentally bumped into each other while buying ice cream at the canteen. Eventually, it developed into a fight between two big gangs in the county. Chen Guang named it, "Say it again." Once this law was triggered, he couldn't back down. Therefore, his eyes behind the sunglasses narrowed even more. "Do you think I'm threatening you?" Today's incident was caused by Mei Zhongheng's evil act of flouting the rules. Are you guys stupid? Or do you think everyone is as stupid as you? Do you think we don't know? The so-called overbooking, isn't it when your airline employees want to board the plane? Do you really think we don't know anything? When I was flying the plane, you guys didn't even know where you were. I didn't expose you just because we don't want to talk nonsense with you. Also, not everyone's time is as cheap as yours. Do you know how much loss we'll suffer if we delay our return by one day? If we really suffer heavy losses because of your unreasonable actions today, Mei Zhongheng can't escape the responsibility. Officer Jack, don't talk nonsense with him. Do it. There's less than 2 minutes before the departure time. The black man, Pierce, shouted from behind. Officer Jack's eyes flickered, and the other two police officers standing beside him reached out their hands to grab Chen Guang's arm. As for Officer Jack himself, he still had his body turned sideways, but his fist was already raised, aiming directly at Chen Guang's face. Either do not make a move, or do it ruthlessly. This was the American police's routine when dealing with suspected extremists, to prevent all dangers before they happen. However, Chen Guang's expression did not change. He reached out his hand and slapped away the two men's hands. You guys started it first, so don't blame me for what happens next. Two loud bangs were heard, and the two police officers who reached out to grab Chen Guang's fists were slapped away as they screamed in pain. On the other side, before Chen Guang's voice died away, his hand that was still stretched out grabbed Officer Jack's fist, twisted it, and pushed it backward. Officer Jack fell on his back and crashed into the white man, Nelson, behind him. I'm the one you bumped into today, so you can't take advantage of me. If it were someone else, wouldn't they be in big trouble? Chen Guang was still standing in the middle of the aisle, his expression unchanged. Officer Jack had just stood up, and finally pulled out his gun, pointing it at Chen Guang. Put your hands up. You terrorist. Or I'll shoot. Looking at the black muzzle in front of him, Chen Guang did not feel threatened at all. He was just annoyed. He was just taking a plane. Why did he have to cause so much trouble? Do you think I'm Hello Kitty if I don't show my power? Why don't you try shooting? As he spoke, he took a step forward toward the muzzle. Officer Jack saw this and quickly retreated. He was afraid that Chen Guang would take the gun, and he did not expect this mysterious man to be so arrogant in front of a gun. Even Tang Ying, who was behind him, became nervous and stood up abruptly. Chen Guang, don't be too impulsive. She shouted in Chinese, but Chen Guang made an okay gesture without turning his head, and said, It's okay, their toy guns can't hurt me. Chen Guang did not believe that the other party would really shoot. Although he had heard that the American police were very overbearing, there should be a limit to how overbearing they could be, right? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.